we'll be talking about the outcome of the WTO-12 ministerial meeting, which took place now a couple of months back in Geneva. This was a much anticipated event because earlier attempts to hold the ministerial was aborted number of times, partly because of the COVID, but also because of various geopolitical circumstances. The event which took place in Geneva, as you know by now, came out with the Geneva package, 10 points. And since then, it has been widely debated whether the ministerial meeting was a success or been disappointing, particularly from the least developed countries' point of view, and in particular, Bangladesh, taking note of Bangladesh's interest. So at CPD, we had been pursuing the WTO-related issues for quite some time, in fact, for decades. And many of you who have joined us today over here had been part of that. And so we carried on with that in partnership with Friedrich Ebert Stiftung this time. Many of you had been there. My good friend and today's presenter, Mustafiz, had been there. And we thought that we will interpret the outcome of that ministerial meeting from Bangladesh perspective, in particular from the perspective of a graduating least developed country. So we are uniquely privileged today to have with us as a chief guest over here is Mr. Yusuf Abdullah Harun, Honorable Member of Parliament, member of the Standing Committee on Commerce, and a very old friend of CPD. If it does not, create any issues with you, I would like to put that on record. Thank you for being here with us. We are also greatly privileged to have the Honorable Senior Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Tapan Kanti Ghosh, who had been in the driving seat for quite some time on these issues. So for making time, we are grateful to him. And we have with us, so we are expecting the President of the FBCCI to join us soon. Apart from that, we have two distinguished discussants for today's seminar. Mustafa Abid Khan, a trade specialist who knows both Dhaka and Geneva quite well. He will be talking to us. And the Director General of the WTO cell, Mr. Hafizur Rahman, also a very experienced person in this area. So without much ado, let me welcome you all once again. I see the people who are present here, each of them are eminent in their own area and expertise, and particularly have great, of both experience and in terms of expertise in this area. I do recognize the Honorable Ambassador from Germany, and also the former Bangladesh Ambassador, Tawfiq Ali, here with us. So we will have a number, I see the former Commerce Secretary also, Suhail Ahmed Chaudhry, and many others with us. I won't take time to recalling each of you, and you will be participating as we get going. So Mustafiz Professor Mustafizur Rahman needs no introduction. One of our leading trade experts, not only in the country, but definitely in the subcontinent and much beyond, who had been following these issues for quite some time. And we have the unique privilege of listening to him, both his insider's view and also his external perspective. Oh, my apologies. I have done an faux pas here. As I mentioned already, that our very distinguished partner in this effort had been Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. Friedrich Ebert Stiftung and CPD also goes back decades, and it is gathering new momentum under the leadership of Mr. Felix Kolbitz. And we have with us the Res Rep Felix Kolbitz with us. May I request Felix to deliver the opening statement. Mr. Felix Kolbitz.
Thank you very much, Deb, for those kind words. And yes, indeed, Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung is in Bangladesh now 9.5 years. We are going to celebrate our 10th anniversary next year. But the cooperation with CPD goes back to the very inauguration of CPD also 30 years ago. And I think I'm quite proud to say that FES has been one of the long-standing, probably maybe even the longest-standing partner for CPD here in Bangladesh. And talking about long-standing projects and support, and I think Professor Mustafis, this is also a very long-standing project that has been postponed and delayed several times due to the pandemic, and it was originally envisioned for 2019, but then the pandemic basically caused the ministerial conference of the WTO to be postponed several times, and I'm very glad that this took place this year and that we all can also now today conclude this project. But why is FES supporting these kind of activities? And I think for us, not only together with CPD, but also with other partners, think tanks from the civil society, and also with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, we have started a journey on supporting Bangladesh on developing scenarios, policy recommendations, ideas, how Bangladesh could navigate in this turmoil, geopolitical, geoeconomical turmoil of the recent years. And I think the graduation is one of the steady points in this whole thing so far. But I think there's also still a whole lot of homework to do for Bangladesh. And with these policy recommendations that Professor Mustafis is going to present today, with some of the other projects we're having with CPD, with RAPID, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we hope to contribute a bit to this discourse within Bangladesh and also between Bangladesh and other partner countries. And that's why I'm also quite delighted to have the German ambassador here today to actually initiate discourses, to initiate discussions on the way forward. And I think with this, and with, I would like to conclude my opening remarks here, and also would like to thank CPD for organizing, for conducting this project. I would like to especially thank Professor Mustafis for also this, to stick to this project, to stick to this topic for such a long time, despite all these setbacks caused by the pandemic. And I would also like to, of course, thank our guests of honor, special guests and chief guests, Yusuf Abdullah Harun, Tapan Kanti Ghosh, and Mohamed Jashimuddin, as well as our distinguished discussant, Mustafa Abid Khan and Mohamed Hafizur Rahman. So with this, I would like to hand over to Professor Mustafis for his keynote presentation. And thank you very much also to everyone else for attending today's event.
Thank you, Mr. Kolbitz, for those kind words, and also in terms of highlighting the importance of today's event. As has been said, Mustafis.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, dear guests. Thank you very much. We are very grateful for all of your presence this morning, and particularly our chief guest, Mr. Yusuf Abdullah Harun, Member of Parliament. He is with us. He has been, as Dr. Devapriya, my good friend, mentioned, he has been with CPD for many, many years. He was a regular participant at our various events. We also have with us the Honorable Senior Secretary, the guest of honor, Mr. Jashimuddin, and also DG WTO Cell. All three of them were present at MC12, which I also had an opportunity to take part as civil society representative. And I am also very thankful to the partnership that CPD and Frederick Ebert Stiftung Bangladesh has. Over the years, we have done a number of works, and particularly this work was deferred because of the deferment of the WTO ministerial meeting itself. But now we are here, and I think that as a member of the GATT and then subsequently WTO when it was established in 1995, Bangladesh as an LDC, a graduating LDC, a low-income country, lower middle-income country, we do have an interest in a rule-based multilateral trading system. I think that is the starting point. For weaker economies, our chair always mentions this, for weaker economies like ours, a rule-based system is always more preferable than a system which is based on economic power and political power. So what I will do is just to mention about the context of today's discussion very briefly, and then the MC12 outcomes and developments. We did go there with some expectation. The senior secretary and DGWTO cell, they will be knowing it. But what transpired at WTO MC12, I will discuss that. And also I will discuss what has been happening since the ministerial and some strategies in going forward. Now, let us recall that the 12th WTO ministerial meeting was held after 5 years following the 11th ministerial meeting in Buenos Aires, which didn't have any ministerial declaration. The last ministerial declaration that we had was the 10th WTO Ministerial Conference, which took place in Nairobi, 2015. So in fact, after almost 7 years, we did have a ministerial outcome document. That is a bit, I think, on the one hand, it is frustrating, but on the other hand, it is encouraging that after 7 years, we did have a ministerial outcome. So that is one thing that I wanted to say. Also, in the backdrop of the protectionist, ascendancy of protectionist measures that we have seen during the COVID, many people thought that WTO is finished. No one is listening to the rules that the WTO itself has been formulating over the years. But then we did have the ministerial outcome. So I think that this is encouraging for us, if we think that a rule-based system is good for us. Although the ambition level at the ministerial meeting was watered down quite significantly, and from the perspective of a graduating LDC particularly, I would like to mention that, and I will come to that. Bangladesh will be graduating on 24th of November 2026 as per the decision of the United Nations General Assembly, and the CDP and the ECOSOC prior to that recommended this. The chair is a member of the CDP and has played a very important role in that context. We know that the government has set up a very high-level, sustainable, smooth graduation committee at the PMO, and there are 7 subcommittees which are working, but I will not go into the workings of this committee. The preparation that Bangladesh is taking, the 8th 5-year plan is supposed to be the graduation strategy plan for Bangladesh. So today our concentration will be mostly on what is happening what happened at MC12, what is happening now, and how to go forward in the context of the WTO. So we are not assessing what we are doing here or what we should do more in the context of the national policies and strategies. So the first focus is what were the expectations from MC12 as a graduating LDC, what actually transpired over there, what are the post-MC12 developments that's going on, because discussions are going on, and what implications those have in terms of Bangladesh going forward. Now, let's just, in 2 minutes, I would like to mention why this is important. You see, the 6 LDCs which graduated till now, the total population of those 6 LDCs is 5 million people, 5 million total population. Bangladesh is the one major LDC which is graduating. So we will have to take it in that spirit and in that context, that the first major LDC is graduating. As you know, it was identified in 1971 with 25 LDCs, and then 27 inclusion and 6 exclusion, and today, as we speak, there are 46 LDCs. So this is the first major LDC. If you look at the 7 LDCs which are graduating, the population of Bangladesh is about 73%. Export and import, and exports at 53%, export of services 71%, import of goods 64%, import of services 50%. So Bangladesh is an outlier in that sense. So graduation of Bangladesh, whether it will be sustainable, it is with momentum, will be obviously in the radar screen of the global community, and it will be very closely watched. Now, there are many implications of graduation, this chart that I have here, we have tried to mention it. The international support measures for the LDCs, which will not be there, and these support measures are in the form of various special and differential treatment clauses in the WTO. The major, in 16 agreements, there are more than 183 special and differential treatment clauses, and 26 of them are specifically for the LDCs. So those will not be there. And also, we are also LDCs, as LDCs in various regional agreements also, we get support measures. For example, in the SAFTA, India provides zero tariff access to the 4 LDCs that are there. So obviously, this is just not the WTO, but also in bilateral and regional context, that LDC status gives us preferential treatment. And also, concessional financing is also there. Some of the concessional financing are linked with LDC status. So once the ISMs are not there, we will not get those preferences. And for Bangladesh, obviously, it has a major repercussion, implication, because Bangladesh is one country which has been able to take most advantage of the preferences. So other countries, many African sub-Saharan countries, LDCs, they were not able to take the advantage of many of the preferential treatment. But Bangladesh did, and that is what really is very important also. But at the same time, it means that when these will not be there, Bangladesh will be the country which will be most affected. So the reverse side is also true. Okay. So here I show that the impacts will be on 2 fronts: domestic space in terms of domestic policy making, and also obligations, compliance, etc., as member of WTO, which is not any more an LDC, developing country. And global space, obviously in the global space, terms of trade and duty-free, quota-free, and degree of reciprocity. In terms of, when we get unilaterally in the WTO, we don't have to take obligations, but we get zero tariff access, etc. But if we graduate out of the LDCs and we go into any regional trading arrangement, there will be obviously offensive and defensive interest, and there will obviously be on the basis of reciprocity, either full reciprocity or less than full reciprocity. Okay, but it will be on the basis of reciprocity. And this is just to say that if zero tariff is not there, and LDCs, 12 LDCs, the WTO Secretariat estimated 90% of the export losses will be on account of Bangladesh. Other things remaining same. If we can make the transition from preferential market access driven competitiveness to skills and productivity driven competitiveness, then obviously we can overcome this. But other things remaining same, 90% of the export losses on account of zero tariff erosion of preferential treatment will be for Bangladesh. So obviously, the challenge for us is that much there. Also, the various other implications, cash incentives, and also value addition with regard to investment, etc., will not be there. Now, when we went to MC12, there was a hope that there will be some measures for the graduating LDCs, a new measure of support for the graduating LDCs in the form of extension of time-bound extension of duty-free, quota-free, and CDP also came up with the idea, and our chair will be knowing it better than I do, design of a debt relief initiative, which they came up with, graduation support fund, and various other proposals were floated that whether we can have a time-bound extension of the international support measures for the LDCs, which are already there. So the proposal was for 12 years initially, but then it was then watered down to 6 to 9 years. And the argument was that, we are graduating under the shadow of the pandemic, number one. Number two, LDC graduation entails graduation in terms of 3 criteria. But there are many underlying structural impediments which still remain in the LDCs. So we need some more time, that was there. Third was that, for example, the European Union has come up with the proposal that they will extend the preferential treatment for another 3 years after graduation. So whether we can have something like that embedded in WTO decision, so that was the one. And the fourth one was that not that that WTO did not come up with some support measures. There are some support measures for the graduating LDCs in place. So it's nothing new that we are wanting. So that's how we went to the WTO, and there was a proposal which was submitted by the LDC group. That proposal was also watered down when it didn't get traction. So the 12 years extension was watered down to 6 to 9 years. Okay. Now, what transpired at MC12? At MC12, really the graduation issue was not very much on the agenda, you see. And obviously the powerful countries, they had other priorities, fisheries, subsidies, agreement on agriculture, etc. WTO issues, LDC issues, graduation issues didn't get a lot of attention. Yes, if we look at para 5 of the outcome document, it's written, we acknowledge the particular challenges that graduation presents, including the loss of trade-related international support measures, ISMs, as they leave the LDC category. We recognize the role that certain measures in the WTO can play in facilitating smooth and sustainable transition for these members after graduation from the LDC category. So, you see, very much watered down. We recognize, we feel those type of language. And as you know, in the WTO, if it is not enshrined like we shall, it doesn't mean enforceable. It's not enforceable. So nothing of that time. Well wishes, good wishes. How this will be translated into actions, that is also not mentioned. Whether there will be a working group which will be discussing this, no, because this will need to be followed up. We don't see any mechanism which has been mentioned to follow up this. So this is something that is of concern to us. So no work program, or at the Committee on Trade and Development, a subcommittee which can then discuss and take it to the General Council. Because in the General Council, it is just speechifying, nothing concrete. So one will have to go for something of a more structured, which we don't see. Also, some powerful members are telling that there is no category in the WTO as graduating LDCs. So we don't see any meaning in discussing issues of support to graduating LDCs, because there is no category. But the LDCs are telling that, the proposal for extension of the special and differential preferential treatment is being submitted by LDCs, which is a recognized group in the WTO, which will be graduating at some points of time. So the counter argument that we had given and our team had given was that it is not submitted by a new group, graduating LDCs, it is submitted by the LDCs. Because what is good is that the proposal for extension of the preferential treatment to graduating LDCs was submitted by the LDCs as a group. On behalf of LDCs, it was Chad, which is not a graduating LDC. So that was our argument. The other issue that was also proposed is that whether we can have a peace clause. Peace clause means that countries extend the ISMs for the graduating LDCs, and no other country will take the extending country, offering country to the dispute settlement body. This is an arrangement which is there in the WTO. It's called the peace clause. So for some years, no one will take any country to the WTO dispute settlement body because they have extended the ISM. So that was another modality that we think that could be there. But the fact remains that after WTO-MC12, over the last 6 months, 5 months, nothing has moved. In fact, the LDC group has watered down their proposal significantly because there is a lot of opposition from powerful countries. What the revision 1, Rev 1, says is that, yes, 6 years, CDP will discuss it at the triennial meeting, 2 triennial meetings, 6 years, or X years. So that is a major concession, that no time frame has been given, because it is a non-starter. If we want to give 6 years or 3 years or 5 years, some countries are telling that no, we don't agree. So it is now 2 triennial reviews or a period to be determined by the preference providing member. You see, so how much watered down it is now. So anyhow, that is the second best or third best option for us. So what we are telling is to extension of the SNDTs, extension of the TRIPS agreement, and also what we are telling is that many of the measures in support of the LDCs, including the duty-free, quota-free market access, has not been codified in the WTO, in fact. Countries are giving bilaterally. So what we are telling that if in the meantime some initiatives are taken in favor of LDCs to be extended to the graduating LDCs also. And the third point is to extend it till the time it is already there. For example, TRIPS flexibilities is till July 2034, and TRIPS and pharmaceuticals flexibilities are there for the LDCs for January 2033, January 1, 2033. So what we are telling is that although, for example, Bangladesh should be graduating in 2026, can we extend it till the time it is there already for the LDCs? Because some countries are telling that after 2026, you cannot get TRIPS and pharmaceuticals, patent and license flexibilities because you are no longer LDC. So how can you get that flexibility, although it is there till 2033? So that is what we are asking. And if you look at this duty-free, quota-free market access, export subsidies, TRIPS extension, trade facilitation, all these, or dispute settlement flexibilities for the LDCs, all these we have now in the revision 1 of the submission by the LDCs themselves, it is just X years, X years, X years, no definitive time. So whatever the offering countries give us, that is, if it is 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years, so we have really gone back and kept it open. So obviously this is something that is that is there. Obviously, the hopes with which we went to MC12, now in the context of the MC12 outcome document and the follow-up discussions, we have really watered down what is our expectation. And it will all depend on how our partner countries, particularly developed countries, they look at it and they are generous enough to give it. We are also, as a graduating LDC, we also have to be very careful with regard to some of the other things which are being discussed. WTO reforms, some powerful countries are questioning the single undertaking. Nothing is agreed unless everything is agreed. So that principle, they want to differentiate it decisions. And also the working of the dispute settlement body, all these are coming under very close scrutiny, and USA, EU, and other countries, developed countries, they are questioning the way that WTO runs. So obviously we will have to be very careful and participate in the discussion and demand that these are inclusive. Open plurilaterals are coming up in very big way. They are bringing climate issues, they are bringing investment issues within the ambit of the WTO, whereas we are telling that there are other platforms. For climate, there is COP, so don't bring it to WTO. In COP, there is an understanding that there will be a fund and there will be reciprocal initiatives that will be taken against our obligations. But if you bring it as a trade-related issue in the WTO, obviously we will be in a disadvantage. Some countries are also telling that private sector should be included in the discussions as a deliberative, on a deliberative role. And that is also not in our interest, because we are now discussing with the delegations, and now if private sector also comes with their own interest, for example trips and other business interests, it will be very difficult for us to really argue with them. So there are a number of issues. GATS, USA is wanting that there should be more undertaking on the part of LDCs and developing countries. And we are telling that we have already committed. And what we have already committed, why should we go beyond that at this stage? So there are a number of issues. I don't have much time, but I think that Bangladesh should take active part in this discussion so that these are held first inclusively, with inclusiveness, and second, that our interests are safeguarded. And also there will be many other demands on notification, etc. As an LDC, we haven't been notifying on a regular basis. All these we also will have to do. So our homework also remains very important. So what I am telling is that let us not expect a lot from the WTO, but take our preparation, our homework, but at the same time, don't forget that we can also get something from the WTO, make WTO work for development. And so I think that we will have 3 identities at this moment. As an LDC, we still have four years for preferential treatment, etc. As a graduating LDC, our demands, we have to continue whatever we can get, but our future is as a non-LDC developing country. That's period. So whatever we get, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years extension, our future is as a developing country, and we should not forget that. Now from there, the first strategy is that there are some extension already in the WTO for graduating LDCs. 5 years, and I have given this chart, what is there. So even if we graduate, there are something in the WTO for the graduated LDCs. So beyond 2026, we'll get these various UN Capital Development Fund, Least Developed Country Fund, UN Technology Bank support, enhanced integrated framework will get supports for 5 years, 3 years, etc. But we must follow the negotiations which will be carrying forward the mandate of the WTO in the fisheries, agreement on agriculture, etc., etc., taking the hat of a developing country. Because whatever will be agreed in the follow-up discussions, these will come as our obligations. So active participation, wearing the hat of a future developing country. That is one message that I would like to leave here, because we will have to have obligations. So what will be the rules? We should take active interest in those, and I am not going into those, but this will be important.
Mustafa, it's 2 minutes.
Okay, sorry. So there will be a lot of, as I was mentioning, but what we can do? Already there are some provisions where, for example, we should declare ourselves as net food importing country. Then we can get some flexibility. We haven't as yet, although 42 of the 46 LDCs, I think, already has. We also have to think about moratorium on e-taxation. So, for example, there is a moratorium on e-commerce since 1998. And that in WTO, there is a decision that either by March 2024 or by next ministerial, whatever is earlier, this will be withdrawn, because there is strong defensive interest of countries. And Bangladesh also is very important. We cannot put customs duties on e-commerce import because of the moratorium. It will be gone. So it is very important for our NBR. So I think that this is important. So last slide. So in view of that, I think one strategy is that we should maintain the LDC solidarity. As I was mentioning, the proposals are being submitted by the LDCs as a group, and argue with the other LDCs, which are not graduating now, that they are also future graduating LDCs. So there is a commonality of interest. We should harp on that. Strive coalition of supporting countries. In the WTO, we have seen that there are some countries, developed countries, which are supportive of the cause of the LDC. European Union has already extended 3 years beyond 2026. So we can also go for other countries. For example, for Bangladesh, Japan, Canada, I think these are the countries. China, India, we can ask for those. Argue against a differentiated approach. I think that anything which is given in the WTO, and so I was telling that some countries are arguing for a differentiated approach, we think that there should be one common support measure. Once you go for differentiated approach, there will be interpretative ambiguities, there will be a lot of discussion whether you need it or you don't need it, so a common measure. And also take best use of the measures in support, which are there, as I was mentioning, for the graduated LDCs. Approach to RTA negotiations. I think that this is also very important because Bangladesh will have to go for regional trading arrangement, and then we will have to strategize whether two-track negotiation is possible. We have seen it in ASEAN, Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, PDR, Vietnam, second track. And another suggestion is to have a negotiating cell like the WTO cell. It is becoming very important, evidence-based policy making. We are going for FTA negotiation, going for comprehensive economic partnership, SEPA negotiations. Countries get not what they deserve, but what they negotiate, as they say, in negotiations. So this is very important. The last point that I will make is that in Doha, there will be the LDC 5 conference. It takes place every 10 years. So that is also an opportunity for us to ensure alignment between WTO and LDC 5 conference. I think our Prime Minister also hopefully will be there. And that is higher than the WTO ministerial, because LDC 5 every 10 years, and then it is the heads of the government. So I think that is, and the last point that I will mention, Chair, sorry, is that Bangladesh's future is as a non-LDC developing country, and let us keep that in mind. And then whatever we can get, next 4 years as an LDC or a graduating LDC, that we should take advantage of. But our future is as a developing country, and we should think about that identity from now on and in future. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mustafiz. I feel bad because stopping you, but you could have gone on for the rest of the day, I'm pretty sure about it. And others would have also liked to hear you. But you got your, what you call your rights, 31 minutes, so as proposed. So you cannot say that your right was violated. And on that. So thank you very much. আমি একটু, if you allow me, আমি একটু বাংলায় সামারি করি, আমার মিডিয়া ভাইরা আছে এখানে। সেটা হলো যে আপনারা এতক্ষণ শুনলেন প্রফেসর মুস্তাফিজুর রহমান বললেন যে MC12-এর যেই মন্ত্রী পর্যায়ের যে WTO-র যে বৈঠকটি হলো তার তাৎপর্যটা কি এবং সেটার পরবর্তী যে সমস্ত পদক্ষেপ গৃহীত হয়েছে সেগুলিও উনি ব্যাখ্যা করেছেন এবং সর্বোপরি আমাদের পরবর্তী করণীয়গুলো সম্বন্ধেও আমাদের দৃষ্টি আকর্ষণ করেছেন। তিনটে বিষয়, তাৎপর্য, পরবর্তী যে পদক্ষেপগুলো এবং তারপরে করণীয় সম্বন্ধে, এই তিনটি জিনিসের উপরই আমাদের জোর দিয়েছেন। উনি বলেছেন যে LDCর যারা উত্তরণ ঘটেছে এর আগে তারা নিতান্তই ছোট ছোট দেশ ছিল জনসংখ্যা এবং অর্থনৈতিক সামর্থ্যের দিক থেকে। বাংলাদেশের উত্তরণটা একটি বিরাট বড় ঘটনা যাদের বৈশ্বিক উন্নয়ন এবং আমাদের জাতীয় দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি থেকে সেই দিক থেকে। এবং এই দেশটি একমাত্র দেশ সম্ভবত যারা WTO প্রদত্ত বা বৈশ্বিক অর্থনৈতিক ব্যবস্থা কর্তৃক প্রদত্ত বিভিন্ন ধরনের সুযোগ সুবিধাগুলোকে কার্যকরভাবে ব্যবহার করেছে, বিশেষ করে বাজার সুবিধার মাধ্যমে রপ্তানি উন্নয়নের ক্ষেত্রে বড় ধরনের ভূমিকা এখানে রেখেছে। এখন যেটা দাঁড়িয়েছে সেটা হলো যে এই সমস্ত সুবিধাগুলি পরবর্তী পর্যায়ে অব্যাহত থাকবে কিনা এবং থাকলেও কী ধরনের নিয়ম নীতির অধীনে এগুলিকে পরিচালিত হবে। সেই ক্ষেত্রে এই যে MC12-এর যে ঘোষণাটিতে তুলনামূলকভাবে স্বীকৃতি আছে যে তাদের ক্ষেত্রে সমস্যা হবে যারা উত্তরণকালীন LDC আছে, কিন্তু প্রতিশ্রুতি নেই। আমি শব্দটা এভাবে বলি, স্বীকৃতি আছে কিন্তু প্রতিশ্রুতি নেই যে এগুলিকে মোকাবেলা করার জন্য পদক্ষেপ নেওয়া হবে। যে পদক্ষেপ এরপরে যেটা বলা হচ্ছে যে পরবর্তীতে যে পরিস্থিতিটা হয়েছে সেই পরিস্থিতিতে দেখা যাচ্ছে আগের যে সমস্ত দাবি দাওয়াগুলো ছিল এই গোষ্ঠীর পক্ষ থেকে সেগুলিও আগের চেয়ে অনেক দুর্বল হয়ে যাচ্ছে এবং বিভিন্নভাবে ভূ রাজনৈতিক এবং ভূ অর্থনৈতিক বিভিন্ন কারণে আরও বেশি সেই অর্থে প্রতিবন্ধকতার সম্মুখীন হচ্ছে বলে দেখা যাচ্ছে। সেহেতু এখন যে এই বিষয়টি জারি হয়েছে যে এর পাশাপাশি যে আর অন্যান্য পরিবর্তন যেগুলি পৃথিবীর বুকে এই মুহূর্তে হচ্ছে এবং ওই যে জেনেভা প্যাকেজ 10 দফা জেনেভা প্যাকেজ যেটা আছে সেইটার আলোকে, সেটা হলো যে WTO সংস্কারের বিষয়ে আলোচনা সেখানে হচ্ছে। কেউ আলোচনা করছেন ব্যক্তি খাতের ভূমিকাকে আরও জোরদার করার ক্ষেত্রে, বিশেষ করে উন্নত দেশগুলোর ক্ষেত্রে। একই সাথে বলা হচ্ছে যে এক এবং অভিন্ন অনন্য চুক্তির মাধ্যমে সবগুলোকে যে একসাথে গাঁটছড়া বাঁধা হতো সেগুলোকে ভেঙে ফেলার কথা বলা হচ্ছে এবং বিভিন্ন ধরনের চলমান আলোচনায় আমরা দেখছি এখন উন্মুক্ত বহুপাক্ষিক আলোচনা হচ্ছে, সেটা সর্বসাধারণের সর্বজনীন বহুপাক্ষিকের থেকে কিছু সীমিতভাবে বহুপাক্ষিক আলোচনা হচ্ছে। এখন যেই জিনিসটা প্রফেসর মুস্তাফিজ জোর দিয়ে বলছেন সেটা হলো আমাদের চিন্তাভাবনার ক্ষেত্রে বড় ধরনের পরিবর্তন আনতে হবে। সেই পরিবর্তনটা হলো আগামী দিনের উন্নয়নশীল দেশের স্বার্থকে মাথায় রেখেই আমাদের আগামীতে আগানো উচিত। সেখানে আমাদের আঞ্চলিক সহযোগিতার বিষয়গুলি আছে, দ্বিপাক্ষিক বাণিজ্য চুক্তির বিষয় রয়েছে এবং একই সাথে দেশের ভিতরে বিভিন্ন ধরনের প্রস্তুতির বিষয়গুলিও আমাদের একই রকম জোরদার করতে হবে এবং সেই আরও অনেক বিষয় আপনাদের আছে, সেটা আপনারা দেখেছেন। উনি একটা সর্বাঙ্গীন একটি পূর্ণাঙ্গ আলোচনা আমাদের সামনে উপস্থিত করেছেন। আপনাদের সকলের পক্ষ থেকে আমি আরেকবার প্রফেসর মুস্তাফিজকে ধন্যবাদ জানাতে চাই। আলোচনা আগাই দুজন বিশিষ্ট বক্তা আছেন। মোস্তফা আবিদ খান ট্যারিফ কমিশনে কাজ করেছেন, জেনেভাতে বহুদিন এই সমস্ত বিষয়ের সাথে যুক্ত ছিলেন, এখনও সক্রিয় আছেন উনি ট্যারিফ কমিশনের সাথে যুক্ত থেকে এবং অন্যান্য গবেষণার সাথে। আবিদ, আপনার সময় সাথে আসেন, যেখান থেকে যে হেঁটে যাবেন সময় যাচ্ছে আর কি। কিন্তু
Okay, thank you. Good morning, distinguished chief guest, respected chair, and other participant of the session. As usual, when Mustafid Bhai make a presentation, it's comprehensive, always comprehensive. Just I want to focus on something. Since it's interesting that that LDC has actually could focus on graduation for the long time. That's the interesting thing that you see that we had a discussion on LDC graduation since 2017 during before this Buenos Aires conference, 11th conference. I remember that there was no declaration, but we raised the issue when actually Bangladesh was not also in the actual pipeline of graduation, because we first met in 2018. But LDC raised the issue in 2017. And if you look at the 2017 chair statement, you will find that there is an issue on LDC graduation, especially trade-related challenges. I remember that I was in Geneva at that time. On fisheries subsidies, we proposed something for LDC graduated, as Moses Bhai also mentioned, that so that the graduated LDC can get the flexibility, same flexibility. But you see that later also in 2018, we submitted, actually I remember that I made it very clear, it's a test case. That is the Annex 7. The Annex 7 of the subsidy agreement, because you know that under the Annex 7, if your GDP is below 1,000 in 1990 US dollar term, then you can continue to be in the Annex 7 list and continue to provide export subsidies. And I remember that at that time Bangladesh actually was, at the current price it was above 1,000, but I remember at the time Nepal was also, first time met the graduation criteria, and their GDP was only 500 something. So from that point, I found, okay, if one LDC graduate from LDC status, what will happen to them if their GNI per capita is below 1,000? So accordingly, we thought it's a missing link. And see, technical issue, we can solve this in the WTO. So we, from LDC, made a proposal. But interestingly, till today, already 5 years, more than 5 years have passed, there is no decision in the WTO. That's an interesting thing. That's a very technical issue. It does not require any political, mandate. It's a very technical issue, but we could not resolve the issue as of today. Later, we submitted on TRIPS also for the other than pharmaceutical. We also submitted a proposal on TRIPS, but the member countries do not agree to address graduation in this submission, but they told us that make a general submission and there we will solve the TRIPS issue. But later we submitted a general proposal, and then as Ms. Mujibhai mentioned, we submitted revised one in this year after. But what we see that despite the fact that all LDC group in Geneva, you see, they don't have any other agenda to discuss in the ministerial. They had only one agenda, the LDC graduation. Despite that, there is no decision on LDC graduation. But you see why it happened. But you see, if you look at all the ministerial, there is no ministerial declaration where there is no decision in favor of LDC. This ministerial has the declaration without any decision on LDC. In other ministerial declaration, you will find that one there is certain 2-3 decision in favor of LDCs. Why it happened? The first, that many member countries didn't want, especially 2-3. I can say that one country actually opposed to have a decision in favor of LDCs. There is a nuance also. You see that the ministerial conference was supposed to be held in 2002 December. So at that time, in ministerial declaration, we have 3 parts. One part says about the assessment of the situation, second part about the future course of action, and third is the decision. The problem was that, that at that time, before December last year, the LDC thought that there will be a decision in favor of graduated LDCs. So just assessment of situation, we negotiated that one, the first, which actually we can see in the ministerial declaration. and consequently they expected there will be a decision in favor of LDCs. But the problem was that did not happen, and we did not put anything in the second part, where the future course of action. We did not put it here, and that is a blunder. So we could not get this decision, and the member did not want to negotiate the December text. So we did not have any text on future course of action, and we did not have any decision. And that created a problem, that we could not get any future course of action for graduated LDCs. And that actually created a problem, and that's a that many countries actually see that was not fair in favor of LDCs. But what I want to say, that I want to mention something, is in WTO, what is happening? WTO, that many countries many countries do not follow the WTO rules. And if you go to the General Trade and Goods Council, agenda, if you see this, the American, imposition of, tariff against China, or on steel against many countries, they will say that, and actually panel decided that there is no actually WTO rule, they are not following that one, but every country is doing that one. That's the problem. So WTO itself is an existential crisis. And why it is happening? Because in the WTO, we don't have any decision on special and differential treatment, how to handle that one. We don't have any decision how to actually reactivate the dispute settlement mechanism. That's a big problem. And third one is that, what will happen to new issues like electronic commerce and other issues we have, and what will happen to agriculture, and then what will happen to Doha. And that's why there is a problem in the WTO. And that's why WTO is not moving. One thing I want to mention, that the first one, that how we can develop, take a position with the developing countries. It's a problem. You see that in many cases, I have seen that one, that the developing country position is dominated by India and South Africa. And it is my assumption, it's not my assumption, that India and South Africa actually cannot pay very well. It's a good example in e-commerce. They blocked e-commerce work program in 2017, and I myself many times told them, don't do that one, otherwise there will be a plurilateral discussion, and they continues to block that one. And now they are saying that, okay, let us revive e-commerce work program. That's the problem. So you have to take a decision accordingly.
Thank you.
The second one, that the problem with the LDC they face with the graduation, that it is UN regulation on LDC graduation. UN regulation says that, that extend the special and differential treatment for least developed countries for a period appropriate to the development situation of the country. So we are saying that there will be no differentiation in the WTO, but UN regulation, we have agreed to the differentiation.
Yes.
And that is a problem. So there must be
I think that is a very important point.
regulation.
I will have to stop you now.
Yeah.
I think you have made fundamental two basic points at the end, and thank you for that. I think Abid makes the point that even if you have technical solutions, as in case of fishery subsidy, particularly when you get to the becoming an annex country, there are more other things than the technical preparation. He also mentioned that the LDC, it's a missed opportunity in the sense that it expected a best endeavor clause for the graduating LDCs. It did not happen. He also reflects on the southern position led by China and India that may not be always commensurate with the LDC position as it goes, and the UN resolution which is there, which differentiates the LDCs based on their level of development. I think the last point which Abid makes is particularly relevant as we move forward with the discussions on what type of international support measures we can expect in favor of the graduating LDCs. Abid, my apologies to you for stopping you over there. I'm pretty sure you have many more things to say. Let me bring in Mr. Hafizur Rahman. Hafizur Rahman is in the driving seat. As you know, he had been there for quite some time in this position and overseeing the negotiations on behalf of Bangladesh, definitely under the leadership of the Senior Secretary of Commerce, but I'm very appreciative of his experience and as well as the expertise he has acquired in this time. Hafiz Saab, the time is yours.
Thank you, Moderator, Dr. Devapriya Bhattacharya, distinguished fellow of CPD. Respected Chief Guest, Mr. Yusuf Abdullah Harun MP, Member, Standing Committee on Ministry of Commerce. Respected Mr. Tapan Kanti Ghosh, Senior Secretary, Ministry of Commerce. Respected President, ABCCI, special guest and audience, very good morning to all of you. First, a comment from our keynote speaker. I'd like to thank the keynote speaker for his very brilliant and detailed presentation on the MC12 outcome and future plan of action. He said, let us not expect much from the WTO. It's a very painful statement that we can accept by ourselves. If we go through the ministerial conference from Bali to onwards, we see that the WTO, among the ministerial conference, before the ministerial conference, the negotiators almost failed to finalize the decision. That means the ministers had to make the decision, not the negotiators or ambassadors in the mission. So it's a current phenomenon. That's why WTO is failing to finalize the decision in the WTO Secretariat before coming to the ministerial conference. It happened in Bali, happened in Nairobi, also failed in Buenos Aires, and finally in Geneva again. But we saw that the decision came all on a sudden at night with the extended period of discussion, 3-day ministerial, but it extended to 5 days, 5.5 days, and then came the decision. It actually questions the inclusiveness of the members. Either all the members can participate in decision making and not. If not, then ultimately the WTO may not provide success or benefit for all the members. So this is a question. We see that newly the WTO is diverting from its original mandate, that's multilateralism. We see several kinds of joint statement initiatives. Either it is a plurilateral or not, that's have a question, but these JSI are making huge concern for developing countries and LDCs like Bangladesh, because we are still in a position that either we will uphold the multilateral system or we will avoid the multilateralism and go by JSI with some countries among the WTOs. That's a big question. Therefore, still Bangladesh could not participate in any JSI initiative, but we feel that we should participate in e-commerce negotiation, in investment facilitation negotiation in many cases. Sir has certainly said that recently the draft revision 1 that's already been submitted in the WTO for preferential market access for graduating LDCs is sufficiently watered down. I agree that the negotiator in the WTO, they could not make a comprehensive submission or a combined submission. They could not make all the LDCs to be agreed to make a strong submission in the WTO. So it's a West Endeavour type of decision that we saw in many ministerial, even in the last ministerial. We see that among the 10 declaration, 4 were on support for pandemic or these kinds of situations. But all the decisions were West Endeavour type decision. Nothing except the moratorium on e-commerce were binding. So we also saw this kind of decision in Nairobi ministerial in terms of preferential rules of origin, in terms of cotton. Everything was West Endeavour type decision, and that's why these decisions were not implemented after the ministerials, even now, not now. We saw a very interesting decision in Nairobi. We saw the decisions are taken on consensus basis, but in the Nairobi, we saw that though it was a consensus decision, but decided that some countries like to implement, continue negotiation on Doha round, Doha agenda, and some countries are not. This is a peculiar decision taken based on consensus, not to be agreed by all. So here also it's a question that how consensus is built and how the decision is taken. So if this is the process of decision taking in the WTO, I believe that the future will be much more questionable. Now next comes what is coming in the WTO. We have just only submitted a proposal for preferential market access for graduating LDCs, and also preparing another submission for intellectual property rights. But some other concerning issues are there. Fishery subsidy agreement is one of them. It's a half-done agreement, though negotiated fully, but during the ministerial conference, just to achieve a decision, it was divided into two parts. Only with some areas of this fishery subsidy, the decision has been taken, where LDC's issues were seriously neglected. You see in the fishery subsidy negotiation, the SNDT, special and differential treatment for LDCs and for developing countries are the same. And it's 2 years only. The major areas were in chapter 4, that is already been left. And it is said that in next ministerial it will be decided. I don't know how it will be possible to do it. And it's a fishery subsidy is a special kind of declaration. It's not a trade agreement, I believe. It's more environment protection agreement. I didn't find anything much more about related to trade in the fishery subsidy negotiation. So there is a tendency we saw during the Seattle ministerial that's WTO is attempting to go to environment protection and other labor right and other issues. I don't know in future the WTO will be an environment protection agreement and a forum or labor right protection forum or not. So these are the issues. There's a concern for LDC. So WTO is a forum.
One more minute, please.
Sir, that's for LDC that can give us a level playing field and some scopes to continue our trade. So in future, I believe along the JSI and also the recent tendency of inclusion of private sector in the negotiation or discussion in the WTO, that will be a very concerning issue. And also the reform that when the private sectors will come into the WTO to talk about reforms and other issues, then certainly the developing countries and LDC will not be enough, their private sector will not be enough to bargain in the WTO, put up their position in the WTO to frame the rules in favor of them. These are the issues that we need to consider and how the reform issues will be there. We saw that the dispute settlement, the appellate body is stagnant for more than 2 years. So I don't know how it will be gone further away and how the LDC's issues, LDC's interest will be taken care of. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Habisha. I'm pretty sure we would have benefited much more if we had given you more time to get more insights and what's happening inside. I have my apologies for that, but we will make it up individually or bilaterally later. Colleagues, friends, excellencies, you have heard Mr. Hafiz talking about how decisions are being made at the WTO, where you get the process ready, but you really do not get the outcome. And there is where even best endeavor clauses are not being properly respected, and the principle of multilateralism is getting fragmented and under threat. Interestingly, he also I thought that was a self-criticism, that how the LDC group is failing to put together robust proposals on time and follow it up adequately. I know you may not mean Bangladesh, but there are others who represent the LDC group at this moment in different forums, and also about the future and the new proposals which are coming from the LDC group, particularly on IPR, intellectual property right, differentiated market access, fisheries subsidies, how the peace period will go, and he expresses one of those concerns that whether WTO is taking on non-trade issues and whether it is distracting us from the major WTO focused attention. Thank you, Mr. Hafiz, for that good intervention. You have heard the two discussants. It is now unique privilege to open up the floor, and I can see who is who in the trade policy issues sitting in front of us, both from within the country and beyond. And so I will be taking on some of them. And just to request you, I know that each of you are capable of keeping us engaged and enchant us for the long time, but you will be very brief and be on the point as it goes. So I will open the floor now. Anybody? So let me invite first Dr. Tawfiq Ali, who had been our ambassador in Geneva and led number of negotiations at different time. Tawfiq bhai, please.
Thank you, Debapriyo. It's interesting for me to hear some of the discussions being held today and Mustafiz's presentation. I've had long association with the CDP for many years, but let me take you on to the point that you raised very recently. How are decisions taken in the WTO? I will just talk about one particular issue, how decisions are taken in the MC, Ministerial Conference. You know, the Ministerial Conference, the date is decided, then 6 months before the date, the topics that will be discussed in the Ministerial, the content, everything is negotiated in Geneva. And before you go to the Ministerial, you know exactly what are the issues that will be decided and how they will be decided. Now, the key issue over here is if you have false expectations, there's no point in having those expectations. Now, even in going to a ministerial, if you're not involved in the green room or closed door meetings, you might as well stay at home. There's nothing for you to do over there. It's a sad realization which I had as having attended the early ministerials, but this is what I found out. So there is where we are. There is a lot of discussion about LDCs, and this latest ministerial is no exception. There are a lot of paragraphs on LDCs which really mean nothing in practical terms. Yes.
Tawfiq bhai, are you saying that having false expectation regarding ministerial outcome emerges from a lack of understanding of the process, that the food has been already cooked in the Geneva process 6 months prior to the conference? That is the point.
Absolutely, not 6 months prior to the conference.
No, in the process of the 6 months.
The process had begun 6 months prior.
Yeah, so I'm saying
and
that
before you go
so
to
are you saying that we did not invest enough during those period?
Sorry?
Are you saying that the LDC group did not invest enough during this period, had a false expectation a miracle will happen at the ministerial?
Exactly. There is a lot of work to be done in advance, and you know in advance whether you're going to get the outcome you want. And if you have high expectations, it will lead to nothing.
Okay.
That's the problem. So this is the difficulty that people have about thinking about, but they must have this understanding of ministerial conferences. Sure. Without it, you go there, have an expectation, it doesn't work out.
Okay.
Now look at MC12. You had two major outcomes as I see it over there. One in fisheries, one in TRIPS, you know, access to medicines for COVID. Now the TRIPS, the deadline is 17th December in which to negotiate it, and I have not really heard of significant progress in that area. In the fisheries agreement, we did have an agreement, but has any country ratified it so far? No.
No, the time limit is still there.
I agree, but the process begins much quicker.
Yeah.
Now, the question that people have raised over here, particularly Mr. Hafizur Rahman, is about the future of the WTO, and Mustafiz about the future of the WTO. The key future depends upon the United States, and we have to understand this. And of course, among the EU also. Now, what is happening? In 2018, in the Trump administration, they had a report and that report one has to study very carefully to understand the US view of the WTO. They made it very clear that the WTO will not work, will not be effective for settling the issues of the US vis-a-vis China. Since then, in December 2019, they stopped appointing someone to the appellate body. Now, if you give me one more minute,
Yes, please.
I'll talk about a few other issues.
In 1 minute, sir.
1 minute, okay. One of the things that has been mentioned here are that dispute settlement processes actually is the fundamental element of the WTO. That is what everything hinges on that. And there are many other dispute settlement arrangements emerging in North American Free Trade Agreement, USMCA, in the former TPP, now CPTPP for Asia, which the US has now resumed. There are others, the EU and ASEAN. They're separate dispute settlement arrangements, and all of that get, strength from the fact that in 1958, the UN has a convention on mutual recognition of arbitration awards. And that 170 members of the UN are party to that, including the US. The EU has a separate dispute settlement mechanism emerging, of which China is a member, but US is not a member of that. Now, these are
That is the alternative to the WTO dispute settlement mechanism, which European Union has put together.
The future of the WTO is really uncertain unless the major players, particularly the US and the EU, support the WTO. That's the point I'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a very, very, very basic point, because the dispute settlement mechanism is the jewel in the crown within the WTO. So, and its dysfunctionality and how it happened, we know that. We're hopeful the reform measures promised in the last ministerial will take these things forward. Colleagues, anybody? Mansoor Bhai, there cannot be a session where you are there and you won't say something on the WTO. You are one of the private sector institutional memory. Please.
Sir, thank you very much. I learned what you have taught me.
Please give a microphone.
যা শিখিয়েছেন 1994 সাল থেকে তার থেকে আমি বলছি Thank you very much, dear.
Thank you for the modesty.
Sir, Your Excellencies and Honorable Chief Guest, a very good morning. Assalamu alaikum. I'll be very brief. Try to be brief. May not be possible. WTO-MC12 outcome. What is the outcome? We see nothing. There was darkness, let there be light. The light was lighted, but darkness still remains. This is the outcome of WTO-MC12, because the decisions are inconsequential, except for the e-commerce moratorium, in which the duty-free transaction of e-commerce is going on until a cut-off date, 24 March. There lies the big challenge for the LDCs, developing countries, who are mostly buyers of e-commerce and services trade. From then, if there is no understanding, then it will be the custom duty will be laid. But
Mansoor Bhai, let me intervene and ask, does Bangladesh e-commerce community has adequate understanding what it actually wants?
Yes, I think I do. They know. Let me finish. You will get the point. If the moratorium goes without understanding, the countries will be able to impose custom duty. The custom duty will be imposed by the developed countries also. What will happen to our own exports? So, Bangladesh should take very active part in negotiating the duty balance, custom duty balance. If the agreement on duty moratorium is not reached, we have to negotiate tariff for e-commerce and services trade, other software trade. This is one of the biggest challenges, because services trade is the 50% of our GDP. Now, coming to the other, I will take a lot of time. I don't want to discuss the rest of the decisions taken, because these are infectious. It has no impact on the post-MC2 world economy. It could not address the disruption caused by the Ukraine war before the MC12. So it failed to the bifurcation of markets, restrictive market.
Let me again repeat.
So
And
what
ask
is
the
the
question.
what is
Manzoor
the program should be for LDCs like Bangladesh. Bangladesh should stop playing LDC card, because LDC graduation will be dealt with only in WTO. WTO cannot take any decision on LDC graduation more and over than they have already taken in MC12. So forget about that. We can go bilaterally with our GSP and duty-free coupling, citing the example of you. They have given us 3 years moratorium. You please give bilateral negotiations. And then we can go for some. WTO as a multilateral decision-making process has lost its teeth. There is no possibility in next 20 years to adopt any resolution. I say what I foresee. So what we should do, we should engage in the group discussions, in plurilateral agreements, which are very effective and binding on more than 90 plus countries are doing this. The SME group, the domestic regulation and services, digital trade and e-commerce, environmental goods, and disputes settlement.
Good.
Mutual
Understood.
dispute settlement. These are very effective areas where we can engage and get ourselves integrated in the system.
Manzoor bhai, এখন
WTO
থামাতে
reform
হবে।
আমাদের সক্রিয়, we will have to very actively participate in WTO reform. If we want it or not, there are going to be a reform process. Thanks the
Thank you.
WTO.
আদরিত দিতে হবে।
You, not for me. I have nothing to gain.
It is always good
WTO
for me.
reform
Please
is
carry on.
very important because it is a multilateral organization. It frames rules. So we have to very deeply engage in WTO reform activities. And the MC2 terms of reference of WTO reforms is fantastic. And I think Bangladesh should have a full flexibility of negotiation in the, and lastly, the Bangladesh own positive side is to take initiative to have free trade arrangements with global trading partners by the year 2026. It is not impossible, it is possible. And e-commerce taxation niye amader will have to be more active. Thank you very much.
But Manzoor bhai, thank you. My apologies for that. But my question remains hanging out there, that regarding the e-commerce, whether our private sector has done their homework on this count or not. So if that is the case, that is, I'm very reassured. But that is one of the criticism which always comes, because the homework we talk about cannot be done only by the government. The other stakeholders should provide government the inputs in these cases. And e-commerce is a particular area for that. Thank you very much. We have with us the privilege of the presence of the European Union's representations led by our Honorable Ambassador, His Excellency from the German delegation in Bangladesh. Good friend and very exposed to the issues. Please, Excellency.
Mr. Chairman, thank you really very much for giving me the floor. And first of all, I would like to thank CPD and the Friedrich Ebert Foundation for staging this event. The issue of how will Bangladesh have to prepare for the upcoming graduation and what will happen is an issue that is very widely discussed now, and I very much appreciate that at such an early stage you are discussing this openly. I'm not a trade expert, and you know that Germany doesn't formulate its own trade policy. It's outsourced since long to the European Union, and in all the respective fora, it's the European Union that is in the lead and that is conducting the negotiations. Just one point I think should be underlined, and it concerns political reflections. Not being an expert, but the idea that has been portrayed as being dangerous or as of a concern for the position of Bangladesh to introduce issues that are not trade related, and also the private sector, I think they are just a reflection of the political discussions in Europe and in my country. That has to be taken into account. And I found highly interesting what the dear colleague said about expectations before you go into negotiations. I think that as diplomats, we are a bit trained, or we should very well foresee and also understand the positions of our partners, of our negotiation partners. That means introducing climate change, you may like it or not, is an issue that has become the most urgent issue in the political discussions I lead in my country. My foreign minister currently in Sharm el-Sheikh is saying that this is the most urgent question even before the war in Ukraine of the time. And so she's reacting let me say, on the discussions that are being led in her constituency. So that this is a position, one may like it or not, but that is a position. And I think with regard to mingling these other issues with trade may also depend a bit on how flexible individual countries, not only Bangladesh, react on negotiations or on talks on these other issues. That means on mitigation and adaptation, but also on other political issues. I would only like to mention questions of fundamental rights, human rights, etc. I think the harder, that is my personal opinion, the harder the position of respective countries in different areas become, the more likely they are to concentrate on the negotiation fora that are most dear and most important for these countries. So I think I may take it at that. Just expectation management, as far as I see, the negotiations for GSP Plus will not be very easy. I don't see neither in the EU Commission nor with the members of national parliaments or European parliaments a lot of flexibility to prolong the conditions that so far have been granted. That's not an evaluation by me, but just as a friend of Bangladesh, I think I would go prepared into these negotiations by expecting not a lot of flexibility, and I'm a bit of an outsider. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, and thank you for your inputs. I think bringing us some reality regarding the climate issues and the trade negotiations, bringing that perspective in, we see that how the climate issue is gathering strength across the world. And if you have followed the latest US elections, the younger population has voted guided by the climate concern, thankfully, it is being said. Although I hear in Europe it might be the otherwise, but the European Union has also taken on board the climate issue strongly, and it will impinge this way or the other on the trade issues. But I think the most important thing, what I take from the ambassador's point, is that GSP plus negotiation will not be easy. And I think, if I'm quoting you correctly, sir. So then, which essentially means a lot to be done within our home in order to prepare adequately for that negotiation over there. Thank you for the timely alert on that. We have Sohail Ahmed Chaudhary, we have one of our former Commerce Secretary. Please, Sohail.
Thank you, Dabapir Bhattacharya, for inviting me, a Marhum Commerce Secretary, who is Marhum for the last 18 years. I just came here to see
whether we are discussing the same thing which you used to discuss 10 years back.
Yeah, more or less. That is true. And number two, I'm very happy that two of the institutions I created as Commerce Secretary 18 years earlier, or even maybe one of them 20 years earlier, is still alive and kicking.
Very good.
One is WTO Cell, and another is BFTI. WTO Cell DG is here, and I don't know whether anybody from BFTI is here. Anyway. Oh, okay. Thank you.
So that's what you call legacy. Good. Congratulations. Anybody else? Private sector. Yes. The Vice President of the BGMA.
Former Vice President. I'm currently on the board.
A Vice President is always a Vice President.
Thank you, Professor Mustafiz, for a nice presentation. I could take that, we have to be in the we have to realize that no more LDC. We are a developing country, or we are going to be a developing country, and our strategy should be there. I would take the opportunity that our respected Commerce Secretary is here. So just wanted to highlight few things from his presentation. One is, of course, we want to. I want to know a little bit clarification from Mustafiz Bhai that about the peace clause, like how we can really buy some time. I also wanted to highlight about the improved schedule. Like improved schedule in GATT will be because we know, as His Excellency Ambassador has mentioned, that we know that our GSP Plus negotiation is not going to really go in a very good way. But there is another thing which really bothering, particularly I'm representing the RMG sector, and we know this kind of accreditation or the certification, particularly for Accord Alliance or different kind of, particularly the new things are coming is environment-related certifications. So this is something, I won't say impediment, because we have to really follow these things, but our government have to really show their reliability and what will be the roadmap there, because this kind of tools in LDC negotiation or any as a developing country, any other powerful country will use. So what will be our course of action? So I wanted to know there. And lastly, I wanted to know from our respected Commerce Secretary that we have to have a very specific negotiation cell, particularly focusing on RNG sector, because we have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was Asha Jamal from garment sector, but he is more than that. I know you're also in the aviation sector, so many others. And so he has rightly pointed out that the negotiations, upcoming negotiation on GSP Pass, or the ongoing on that sense, will be challenging. And he's suggesting creating a negotiation cell within the WTO cell, or
really focusing on few RNG sectors where actually we have to really make a strategy for the improved schedule.
I wouldn't call it a cell. I would have called it a task force or something like that, an assignment-related, more dedicated set of paper. And very good suggestion on that. Anybody else, please? It cannot be that we don't have gender balance in our speaking. Please, Ferdosara from the Build.
Thank you, Dr. Devapriya. Thank you so very much. Actually, I was enjoying the presentation of Dr. Mustafiz Bhai. He is always excellent, and today's presentation is definitely added more knowledge to my thoughts and thinking. So I really thankful to CPD and especially to Dr. Mustafiz. I have some very specific points because I do not know so much about the WTO issues. So let me first come to Dr. Mustafiz. Dr. Mustafiz, he definitely, as the largest, I think, country in the LDC group, we enjoyed much from the ISM, and now we will definitely be facing more challenges after the LDC graduation. This is true. And the first thing I would like to know from you, from your presentation, you have mentioned, according to WTO Secretariat, almost 90% of all export losses of 12 graduating LDCs will be on account of Bangladesh. If you can please a bit explain a bit in that respect, it would be helpful for all the audiences, I believe. Second thing is that the Para 5 MC12, I think Hafizur Rahman, Hafiz Bhai is very much aware, and he mentioned it several times. We thought that this is one of our success because in this Para 5 there is a word graduating LDC. So we thought that this is different types of acknowledgement of graduate, as a graduating LDC has been mentioned in the MC12. So in that respect, but you were mentioning, and we are also aware that this is nothing, is a sort of wish list. But can we just take these issues, that is the word graduating LDC, because some of the WTO members has already opposed that how come this type of new group is coming up. So let me first finish. You have requested me to tell something. And the number 3 is the accredited working group, as you have mentioned, additional working group. So do you mean that it could be a request from Bangladesh as an LDC to WTO, or if you can please explain a bit. And I would also like to know, as Mr. Arshad Jamil has mentioned, in regard to the peace clause. You have also, I think it is definitely a very risky issues that in COP27 there are some of the issues have come up which is not supposed to be dealt by the COP, but it has already been included. And in case of NFIDC, so far I understand that Ministry of Commerce has already started working in that respect. But even though if we can be treated as NFIDC, but it will continue up to 2030, definitely we need to start working in that respect so that we do not, we can come out from this situation. Now, last 2 points. And the second point is from Hafiz Bhai, and all of us, all the panel members has also mentioned, that when private sector issues will come, then LDC and developing countries will face problem. There are some, I think, private sector tycoons here. If they can add something in that respect, would be helpful for us. And last, non-trade issues, environment as a non-trade issues, how this has been elaborated and taken care in these issues. But I believe is that the private sector feels the pain of environmental issues and compliance related issues. This has added cost to the trade. And even if it is a non-trade issue, but it is so far not a non-trade issue. It has been included as a trade-related issue. So how do you like to explain it a bit? Thank you.
I think that is a whole list of specific issues, I think so, and very pertinent, I am pretty sure. No, I am pretty sure if you have given you another 10 minutes, you have responded to those questions too, because you have your answers as well. I am pretty sure about that. But very pertinent issues, and I think resonates well with what we have been all discussing. Colleagues, if anybody else wants to volunteer, please present yourself and do it.
My name is Mohammad Abu Yusuf. I am Joint Secretary, Finance Division, Ministry of Finance. Thank you, Mustafiz sir, for your excellent presentation. I will make just 1 or 2 observations. My understanding is that this is the reality that we are moving from a non-reciprocal trade regime to reciprocal trade regime. This is a crude reality. And as Mustafiz sir has rightly mentioned, we will be losing many international support measures after graduation. So my understanding is that definitely at WTO front, we will be trying our best as a LDC member in association with other LDC group, other LDC members in group to get market access or other flexibilities even after graduation. But my suggestion is that we must increase our capacity building so that we can export, we can diversify, we can export on a reciprocal basis in competition with other players who are in the same export market. Furthermore, we need to really work hard. I know Ministry of Commerce is really working hard to negotiate and sign FTAs, SEPA, and other RTAs. But we find that there are a lot of challenges during negotiation and after negotiation. For example, after negotiation, maybe we are given market access for 20 different items, but our export basket is very limited. So even after getting the market access under FTA, we cannot. So my suggestion to you, humble suggestion would be to really work hard in conjunction with other line ministries, including Ministry of Industries, NBR, and Agriculture Ministry, to increase our capacity to diversify our export basket, and also to take the benefit of services sector. We must work on mutual recognition agreement, accreditation, certification, etc. And more important, although our domestic regime keeps everything open up other than many few licensing issues, but are we really investing enough to offer services in the table so that we can entice our counterparts? Thank you, sir.
You gave the question, are we investing enough? I am now giving you a question. Are we investing enough? No, what is your response? You are insider, tell us.
Okay, although I'm not in the Ministry of Trade, but my understanding is that I may be wrong. Please correct me if I am wrong, because I do not have the inside information. My outside impression is that actually we are not still sure what are the service sectors that we are ready to offer, and whether do we have adequate study about this. Thank you, sir.
Okay, good point. Thank you very much. Colleagues, if you allow me, I would like to put a round of applaudissement for the comments from the floor. Give a big hand to them. I think it's very, very useful. It only shows we had a good set of people over here, they're relevant people, and they really responded well to the presentation done by Mustafiz over here. I would like to proceed towards the conclusion. I'm pretty sure you have more important business for the rest of the day, apart from a good lunch. And so let me invite our special guest over here today, in fact, the guest of honor, who is the captain of the ship of the private sector. Lots have been said about the private sector over here. Mr. Mohammad Jashimuddin, he is an entrepreneur of his own right and also the chair-president of the Federation of Chamber of Commerce and Industries in Bangladesh. Jashim bhai.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank moderator and today's the chief guest, Mr. Yusuf.
Jashim bhai, you had been also in Geneva. So you are part of that frustration, I guess. Yes.
Mr. Yusuf Abdullah Harun, MP, Honorable Standing Committee on Ministry of Commerce, Bangladesh, and the parliamentarian, and also he was the president of FBCCI, he's a former president. And among us, Mr. Tofon Kanti Ghosh, Senior Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, and Mr. Hafizur Rahman, already he already speak, and Plex Colbiggs, the resident representative, Frendik Elber Stranding, Bangladesh, and of course Mr. Devopriyo. And in front of us, there is the ambassador from UAE and the private sector representative and former secretary. For me, I am not a WTO expert. I was in in ministerial conference. I was with our honorable commerce minister, and Mr. Hafiz Bhai also, our Mustafiz Bhai also there. So we are there. From private sector, of course, LDC graduation is a pride and challenge and opportunity. But time was very difficult for us now, because the 2018 we graduated, we finalized we are going to for the LDC graduation, and 2020. 21, 22, we are facing serious problem. We even not think about the COVID-19. Now again they start the Ukraine and Russian war. Now everything is changed. The European Union, German, and every big country, they are saying for environmental issues. Bangladesh stopped the coal plant because of the commitment of COP26. Our honorable Prime Minister committed, we care about the environment. But Germany now, they already started the coal-based power plant. So because of the necessity, that's why. So of course, Bangladesh, for LDC graduation, there is a roadmap, there is a plan, and because of that, the government is setting up the mega project, the infrastructure, the special economic zone, all these things, because we need a lot of investment, foreign investment for the graduating nation, as a graduating nation. And because of this present situation, it's very difficult to invest. Even the local, the Bangladeshi investor also very difficult to think the new investment because of the global situation. The global now we are facing this recession, like a recession. Every big country also facing same problem. So I think the expert and the commerce ministry, the private sector, and we are working together. There is a LDC graduation, there is a committee in our principal secretary is the headed by principal secretary, and the FBCCI also member of that committee. So we are working couple of sector like export diversification, competitiveness, for the tariff rationalization and subsidiary and the access to the market, and also IP issues. So these all the issues we are working. And Bangladesh is what Mr. Devapriya and Mr. Mustafis already explained. Bangladesh is of course Bangladesh enjoy the benefit of the LDC's benefit because of the we develop our product. So the problem is we are doing very good in export, but the only 83% is concentrated is a single item, like only on the ready-made garments. So we need to go for diversification. So that diversification is not that easy, and we are trying last couple of years to we are saying diversification, but which sector get all the benefit? The government can give every sector that benefit. Commerce Ministry can give all the recommendation for all the sector that same benefit or not. So now is around 12 sector is coming up. They are doing very good. They are more than $1 billion. They are already going for the export. So we need to work there for that 12 sector, how we can increase their efficiency, skill development, the environmental issues, what the build managing director, she already explained about the compliance issues. This is a non-tariff issues, but now this is a part of the business. If my factory is not compliant, I cannot sell. The European Union, they are saying if your factory is not sustainable, I will not buy. H&M CEO, he's telling, if you are not sustainable factory, if you produce from coal-based power plant, then we will not buy from you. So this is a non-tariff thing, but they are footing on the clause. So this is very difficult. Now the European country, they are also using the coal-based power plant. So this is because of the timing. So we need to work hard. Of course, we try to get the benefit of that. So what will be the next? Next is the GSP plus maybe. Next will be maybe time by time, because we already here is 4 or 5 years already gone because of the COVID and also the Ukraine and Russian war. You don't know when it will be finished, what will be the the outcome of the war. So we need a time to negotiate to how we can go for the time. We need a time. we need a time for by the time, of course, and if it is a GSP plus, that is also big issue for the diversified sector, like the pharmaceutical, like our plastic sector, say plastic sector. Plastic is GSP plus is a double transformation. So there is the pharmaceutical, maybe our garments industry, they buy the fabric, now they are buy fabric and they are produce the garments and they are exporting. Next step is that they need to produce here is a fabric. So there is an opportunity for the fabric mill, maybe opportunity for the investment. But what about the petrochemical complex? It's a huge, big project. It's not easy. So if we cannot import the raw materials, we cannot export because of the double transmission we need. We need to refinery to invest there. So this is the actually practical situation, and we need to work together. And for diversification also, for if we talk about the backward linkage industry, we don't have the good NBR. They are giving the permission for this factory. So if you if you want to produce this one, you need these machineries. So if you put like this clause, how the backward linkage will come up? If you put every machine, one factory, so then there is no backward linkage industry there. So in our honorable father of the nation, he established the BISIC. Why? BISIC, because of the small factory, the big factory, they will go for the subcontract, they will buy the small things from the backward linkage industry. So today our garments industry, why they do better? Because of in the meantime, there is a lot of backward linkage industry already there. So I think we need to work very hard for all these issues, and we need to have time also. And of course, in front of us, there is a timeline, 26, 29, maybe because of that COVID and Russian war, maybe we need another 4 or 5 years. Then we should have a plan, and the FBCCI already submitted 3-4 documents to the government, and like a book, we already give it to we discuss with all our stakeholders, all our the sectors, we discuss and make the plan how to overcome the situation, the export diversification, for the tariff rationalization, for the other market access and the subsidiaries, and also the IP issues. So if we work, the government, the committee already working the last Thursday, I think, there is the review meeting in all the committee, they submitted their report to the government. So I think, of course, I like to thanks to our CPD and especially Mr. Debo Priyo and Mustafiz Bhai. Mustafiz Bhai is working, he's the, I think from our side, he's the best expert on the WTO issues, and he always positive for country. And this, I think I like to conclude here. So thank you very much to giving me opportunity to say something on behalf of private sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President, for highlighting the challenges that the private sector is facing in taking the country forward. We are in full solidarity on that. And the issues that the implications for regarding the further diversification of the economy, and also creating the backward linkages, as you have rightly mentioned, and the action program which has been prepared by the FBCCI regarding tariff rationalization and many other issues. Along with that, I wish you luck on that. And I also noticed that you have implicitly accepted that the new so-called non-trade issues will become part of the trade issues as we move forward, because that has become a bit of a reality, and we are going forward with that. The colleagues, thank you once again to the President of the FBCCI. Mustafiz wants to exercise his right to reply. So, Mustafiz, it was essentially all appreciation. What are you going to reply to?
No, thank you, Chair. There were some questions, so I would like to address very briefly. Ferdowsapa's question with regard to 90% of the export losses falling on Bangladesh. That was an exercise carried out by the WTO Secretariat. At that time, there were 12 graduating LDCs. So they did the modeling, and they showed that if the tariff rates are raised from 0 to the existing MFN rates, operative tariff rates, then there is an amount of loss for these 12 LDCs, 90% of which will fall on Bangladesh. So that was the exercise. We at our CPD also did a similar exercise in 2018, and we showed that the loss to Bangladesh will be about 14% of our export of that time, which was equivalent to $2.8 billion. But as I said, it will all depend on our homework. If we do our homework, obviously we can reduce the adverse implications and even take advantage of the regional trading arrangements, etc. So exercises should be taken and in that spirit. Graduating LDCs, yes, that was the issue that was raised by some of the countries in the WTO, that there is no category. There are categories: developed countries, developing countries, LDCs, and SVs, small and vulnerable economies. So there is no category called the graduating LDCs. So that's what we are telling, that the submission is being made by the LDC group. So the issue concerns LDCs which are graduating, and all LDCs will be graduating at some point of time. So we are not talking about creating a new group. It's LDCs which are graduating. Unfortunately, it's graduating LDC, that's the time. Peace clause, first the working group. You see, there was this decision in at the WTO-MC12 recognizing the difficulties of the graduating LDC. So how do you then go forward? What do you do? There has to be some procedures in the WTO in order to follow up that. How do you mitigate those difficulties? So either a working group can be set up, and I had a very long discussion with the WTO Secretariat in preparation of this. Long conversations. Our chair will also be knowing. He was also our permanent representative in Geneva and also member of CDP. So maybe they will be knowing. But I was told that there has to be a procedure so that we can come up with some decision with regard to the graduating LDCs as a follow-up of the MC12 decision. So working group is one. Peace clause is another. Peace clause means that there is a peace clause in the WTO also, like for the public stock holdings, that the subsidy that you give to your public stock holding is not calculated in the subsidies. That is the agreement. So no country will take you to the WTO dispute settlement body for 4 years. Okay, so that's the peace clause. So support to the LDCs, graduating LDCs, can also be given through an understanding that countries agree to extend the preferential treatment, and no one will take those countries to the dispute settlement body, that it is a violation because these are not LDCs anymore. So that's one. With regard to reciprocity and non-reciprocity, I think that non-reciprocity can also be less than full reciprocity, and that's why I gave the example of the CMLV in the ASEAN FTA. So any negotiation that we go, it can be two-track. So I think that less than full reciprocity, and that's where the negotiating cell, Chair, I will differ in the with you in the sense that the task force is a temporary thing. Negotiating cell will be an institution like the WTO cell, and you remember the 1998 proposal that you also submitted, the creation of a BFTI and also creation of a WTO cell. Two of the suggestions that we provided in 1998 that has been implemented. Very happy to see, and thank you, Secretary, for that. So I think that a permanent body is required, because we will be going into those negotiations over the next few years. So something of an institutionalized thing will be perhaps required. Where it will be placed, I am not sure. And the last point with regard to bringing on board climate issues, labor issues, yes, in the bilateral negotiations or negotiations with the EU or other countries, or in the context of the GSP plus, these will become very important. The point that I was making is that whether we should bring it at the WTO, where you are only talking about trade-related rules, but there is no reciprocal support. For example, I'll give you one example, trade facilitation agreement in the WTO. What was the agreement? Category A, Category B, Category C. Category A, we accept that we will do it immediately, trade facilitation measures.
Category B, we said that we will do it in 5 years or 7 years. Category C is that we will do it when the technical and financial support comes. So we can go for that type of negotiations so that it's we don't have to just undertake the obligations, but there is no commensurate support coming against that. That will be very much I think challenging for countries like ours.
Thank you, Mustafiz.
Thank
Let
you.
us convene another meeting on the work program. I think so. That was a very detailed and a very specific response to all the issues which have been raised, and I'm serious about that, and also to our partners that to take this issue forward, one will definitely can put together a work program which is already coming through, as it says, specific to sectors, overall framework, and other issues. Colleagues, let me invite now our special guest, Mr. Tapan Kanti Ghosh, the Senior Secretary of the Government. He has taken his time to be with us this morning. Please go ahead. And had been attentively listening. So let us hear from him. Mr. Tapan Kanti Ghosh, the Senior Secretary of the Government.
Thank you. Distinguished Chair, Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Yusuf Abdullah Harun, Member of Parliamentary Standing Committee on the Ministry of Commerce, Professor Mustafizur Rahman of CPD is the authority on the issue, and we have seen today that how extensive his presentation was. My colleague, Dr. Mustafa Abid Khan, Mr. Hafizur Rahman, and President of BCCI, Mohammad Joshimuddin, and other distinguished guests, Excellency German Ambassador, former Ambassador to WTO, Dr. Tawfiq Ali, former Commerce Secretary, and all other distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon. I think, first of all, I should confess that I am not an expert on WTO issue, but since I am working as Secretary for last almost 1.5 years, and listening to so many workshops and discussions, I have gathered a bit, not the nitty-gritty of all the WTO agreements. But starting with, I think, what Dr. Tawfiq Ali has said, that it was my first presence in a MC, Ministerial Conference, the Ministerial Conference 12, and I was a bit disappointed also. Although I didn't have much expectation while I left Dhaka, along with our Honorable Commerce Minister and some other colleagues. And in some discussions, particularly organized by ERF and other organizations, I also expressed that we should not expect more, because we know the world economic environment, political environment. And WTO is nothing immune to that, what is happening throughout the globe. Actually, it is the reflection that we see in the WTO stage. But what particularly, disappointed me is that the treatment of, the less powerful countries at the final stage of discussion, I think that was very disappointing. It was not inclusive. Every day we talk about inclusiveness, transparency, and all this, but I didn't find any transparency and inclusiveness in the final stage of the discussions. So that was, I think, a disappointment and a learning for us. And from that, I think I fully agree with what Mr. Arshad Jamal Dipu has said, that we need to look forward as a developing country, not begging as a LDC country. And we have that strength in Bangladesh economy. The problem is that there is, of course, a global space, global perspective, and a domestic space that we are playing. but I think we need to work a lot more in the domestic sector. You know, whether the non-trade issues are being discussed in WTO or not, it will not matter, because the partner countries that we are going to trade with, they are incorporating those issues in their domestic law regulations, and that will be binding on their actors, economic actors, and they will not be able to defy that. So if you want to export, or if you seek trade or investment for that matter in Bangladesh, then you have to comply with that. And in that regard, we need lot of reforms in many policies, in some institutions, and with regard to capacity building. For the present stage, what we see that last 30 years, as we much and much talk about diversification, product diversification, but it is happening the other way around. More and more concentration in RMG sector. Last financial year, we exported $42 billion of garments products, and it was 83 or 84% of the total exports. So if we could have been able to bring 4 or 5 more products to the export basket, then our export would have been more than $200 billion. So there we need to work. This is one point. The second point is that there is a lot of negative narratives that after LDC graduation, Bangladesh would be in a deep trouble. I don't think so. Because without having any duty benefit or even discriminatory duty benefit in the US market, Bangladesh is doing very excellent in exporting particularly garments products. So if we can do that in US market, why not we can do in other markets post LDC? Number 3 is that around 57 to 60% of our export is destined to European Union markets and UK. UK has already announced their GSP policy, and there is a provision for enhanced framework under which Bangladesh will be eligible post LDC, after the LDC graduation. And this is more generous than European Union GSP regulation, proposed European Union GSP regulation. So UK is okay. Under the GSP, under the proposed European Union GSP regulation, I don't see any impediment for Bangladesh to be included in the GSP plus. One thing is that whether Bangladesh would be able to include RMG sector under GSP plus, that is the question. There is a provision in the safeguard clause, and that might hamper RMG sector to be included in the GSP plus. This is called actually product graduation. And in the present European Union GSP regulation also, there is a product graduation, but that is applicable for developing country and developed country, not the LDC country. The problem is that we are talking about that there is no graduating LDC category in WTO. But in the EU GSP regulation also, there is no category of post LDC, I mean the graduating LDC. If that had been there, then Bangladesh would have been included in the garment sector would have been included in the RMG sector. So there we are negotiating that our largest export sector, RMG, that can be included in the, the proposed EU GSP regulation that will be in place from 1st of January 2024 to 2033. After that, we don't need actually, and we will not be able to include it because for any upper middle income country, there is no preferential market access in European Union. So then we have to go for FTA. So considering all these, I think the preferential market access, and we are also negotiating with other big trade partners of Bangladesh other than EU, UK, bilaterally to secure some extended period of preferential market access. And some of the countries actually shown interest that they will consider, but most of the countries are not in favor of extended preferential market access for LDCs bilaterally. But if we can secure in the WTO, that's why we are discussing today so many things. But if we can secure extended period of preferential market access and other ISMs in the WTO, but I think I am not very hopeful. I am not very hopeful, particularly if you see the, the world politics, the way it is going on, and the more and more, protectionism and reshoring of, trade, friendshoring. We have now seen a word, friendshoring. That means making international trade with friendly countries. It's a very recently coined term. I used to know it last week only. The friendshoring. So in this political, economic climate, I don't see much, hope in WTO. Although it might change, the war might come to an end, and also we have seen some very ray of hope that the two largest country, the leader of the two largest economy of the world, they have currently met, and it has given some positive signal to the world. So if this sort of, rapprochement surface in future, then it will bring more positive in the WTO also. With regard to other issues, I think I will, how many minutes I will get, I don't know.
No, if I stop you, you may say that I'm not being inclusive about the LDCs. So I am not being, I don't do that. But you take your time and please close it. Then we will bring in the chief guest.
Okay. So for Bangladesh, I think what I just mentioned, that we need to work hard in domestic front. But that is easily said than done. Because last few years working in the Ministry of Commerce and also in Brussels, I have said that all that we need to do is known to the policymakers. It's not that they don't know it. And every day we are getting, feedbacks from our colleagues from civil society, from think tanks, from private sector. But it's very difficult to bring those reforms in those very critical area and under this difficult scenario of the world. Like if we want to have FTA, we know that we have to lower the custom duty, which is 1/3 of the total revenue generation. So under this situation, we are demanding even more and more revenue because we have a big subsidy for 3F particularly, fertilizer, food and fuel. And these are so necessary items that you have to, generate revenue by any way, You don't have any option for a democratic country. So these are very difficult space that we have to lower the duty, custom duty, and also supplementary and others, but we need to also generate duty from, the revenue from direct sector like income tax and others, and non-tax revenue.
Yeah.
So, but some reforms had actually started. In the last budget we have seen although it's little, but I think it has started. And as we have seen that after Rana Plaza, the industry understood that business as usual will not work, and they have actually turned around. That disadvantage has been turned into a possibility. So here also, we have started, and all the policymakers at the upper level, they have now have a realization that we have to reform in this area. We have to bring reforms in this area to attain a sustainable, graduation. So I think this is very important. For other area, the NFIDC, net food importing, we are going to submit in the next month so that we can have. For the subsidy is a big area, we are giving export subsidy or cash incentive to 43 sectors this fiscal year, and it's more than 13,000 crore taka. So it's a big amount. We would have been very happy if we can, drastically lower it, but it's difficult. But we are discussing it should be selective, like, man-made fiber is a very issue, that diversification within the RMG sector, that has not happened also. Only 5 items from RMG sector is accounting maybe almost 80% of the garments export. So, but the world trend is 70% RMG is being produced from man-made fiber. We are the other way around. We are producing 75% of our RMG products from cotton-based. So there remains the, very, opportunity and also challenge that how can you bring the backward linkage industry? How can you incentivize those industrialists? So we can maybe for 3 years can give cash subsidy, but after that we have to have identified other issues, other area where we can give, support to the new areas. So we are continuously, assessing the situation. We are bringing reforms, although albeit maybe a bit slow, but I think, and also with regard to FTA negotiations, I don't have much time, otherwise I would have discussed it in detail, that with some countries we are getting very good response, but some countries they are very reserved, they don't want to have FTA even with Bangladesh. So sometimes it's said that we don't have the capacity to negotiate. It's a bit misnomer. Because you can say that, okay, government officials, they don't have any negotiating power, they cannot speak in English and all this. But the problem is that the partner countries, if they don't show any, interest, if they don't find interest to have deeper trade relation with Bangladesh, how can you, influence? It's not only the, negotiation, because they must have also find mutual benefit from our country. And that we find that why some countries are getting so many FDI, why we don't find. So there lies, again, the creating the congenial atmosphere, the branding Bangladesh, and also reforming in line with the global tide that is, we are seeing throughout the globe. So I hope that, government of Bangladesh, in conjunction with the private sector, in the civil society and others, we are working on it. And although WTO may not yield much result for the graduating LDTs, I think Bangladesh can sustain on their own strength if we can really work on these, some of the areas that I discussed and some of the areas that you actually know much better than me. Thank you very much.
You have just heard the Senior Secretary, Ministry of Commerce. You can see that he has really taken detailed notes and also responded to you, not only on the framework issues, but in a very granular way to the specific suggestions made by all of you over here. Thank you very much. And as he has said, that the problems are very well known to all of us, also to the policymakers. We even know what is to be done. But doing it itself is, of course, is a great, great challenge. And we can only sympathize with you for running that show. And we can with appreciation, see the changes which are taking place in this regard as the idea sinks in that way. Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Guest, for sitting through, listening to us. And also possibly you are reminiscing all your other days and your other incarnation. Mr. Yusuf Abdullah Harun is a man of many colors. One of them is that he had been the leader of the Chamber of Commerce, the Federation of Chamber of Commerce. He is also a successful businessman himself in many ways. And he had been in the policy-making process for quite some time. And he is not by accident is in the Standing Committee of Ministry of Commerce. He had been in the WTO negotiations in and out in different capacities, and we are extremely privileged to have his presence today with us, and CPD really is very proud of the relationship we enjoy with Mr. Yusuf Abdullah Harun. Honorable Member of Parliament.
Thank you very much. I was hoping I'd be placed a couple of chairs away from Deva Priyo.
No.
But seriously speaking, I mean, he's a great friend of mine, and we have worked together for a long time. And I cherish his friendship, and indeed the friendship of everybody in CPD. First of all, let me thank the chair for inviting me today. We just heard our special guest, Mr. Tapan Kanti Ghosh, Senior Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, and also the guest of honor, Mr. Jashimuddin, who's the President of the Federation of Chamber of Commerce. We also heard from Mr. Mustafizur Rahman, who was the keynote speaker today, and the excellent paper, very comprehensive, as always. We also listened to Mr. Felix Kolbitz, Resident Representative Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, Bangladesh. And indeed, Dr. Mustafa Abid Khan, who has been working for a long time in this very subject, and Mr. Hafizur Rahman, His Excellency the Ambassador of Germany, and other distinguished participants and guests. Excuse my voice, I just had a bad cold this morning. The 12th WTO Ministerial Conference held in June this year in Geneva had somewhat resuscitated hope in the WTO, which in the last few years was thought to be in ICU. The impact of COVID-19 on global economy was devastating. On the other hand, China and USA was intensifying their competition to extend their sphere of influence and carve up a bigger share of the global trade for themselves. Meanwhile, the emergence of powerful regional trade groups also will have profound impact on the global trade and investment. We have seen the emergence of the East Asia Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which comprise 1/3 of the global GDP and 1/3 of the global population, and is bigger than the European Union. It is hoped and suggested that one day it may become the most powerful driver of Asian economic surge. While the world was on a course of steady post-COVID recovery, the Russia-Ukraine war in February this year dealt a devastating blow to global trade and supply chain. There is no end in sight as yet, although people are hoping that the end is near. Meanwhile, speculations are rife about impending global recession and capital market meltdown. In this scenario, the government all over the world are moving towards attaining strategic autonomy of supplies to protect its citizens and industries, although at times with including cost inefficiency. However, once the present situation, the present crisis are resolved and normalized, we will see the revival of WTO, hopefully, albeit after several important institutional reforms. The new issues like energy, supply chain, currency, new technology, climate change, these are going to dominate our discussion in the future, and hopefully WTO will find itself a role in these issues and revive itself again. But one thing I must say here is that when WTO started and we've seen its functioning for a while, there is a saying among the delegations that you do not get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And that's still true today. And this is why I think it's upon us, the members, to prepare ourselves thoroughly and build up connectivity with peers to back our causes. This is very important. Now, in the backdrop of this international scenario, Bangladesh is set to graduate out of the LDC. And we have formed a national committee which is housed in PMO and also 7 subcommittees. Mr. Hafizur Rahman have highlighted some issues going forward in our negotiations. An estimate says that about 90% of all export losses of the 12 graduating LDCs will be on account of Bangladesh. This is a very daunting picture. Bangladesh will have to shift from preference-driven competitiveness to skill and productivity-driven competitiveness to ensure sustained growth. Cash incentives for exports, subsidies, tariff protection, and to protection to domestic industries, which are very often inefficient, will have to go. And we have to make necessary preparations for those. If you see the countries that graduated before us, most of them are still languishing there. Very few made their way up from that. One bright example is South Korea. So therefore, we should take a lesson from those experiences as to where we are and what we should be doing. So Bangladesh has to work vigorously with the reforms necessary to square up to the challenges that graduation presents, as well as build capacity to negotiate skillfully and create a strong association with peers in the WTO. Now, I'll discuss a few things here. In the Federation itself and the business community, we've been trying for a long time to build capacity for these issues, WTO issues and other issues. But we have not been very successful, I must confess, as yet. We've made progress, but we need to have much more discussion and research in our trade bodies. And this is why I would say that sometimes successful entrepreneurs in various sectors should also be included alongside the business trade bodies in these various functions, various committees, because I think they also have a lot of experience to impart. Now, the other thing is, we have seen over the years, we have been talking all the time about diversification of markets and products, but frankly, we haven't done much. I think we have been concentrating too much on our ready-made garment. The facilities that we've given them, the sort of concessions we've given them should have been given to other potential industries which by now would have been much bigger had they received those supports. The other thing is the NBR. Now, there's a fundamental flaw in our setup of NBR. They're both the planners and the collectors. Now, that cannot be right. So I think the planning for NBR, the revenue mobilization, should be done elsewhere, maybe the Internal Resource Division, but NBR should be separate. Their main job is to collect. There is a problem where when the revenue falls short of the target, there's a pressure on them to go for extra revenues. Then they start searching for industries and areas where they can go and put extra burden. Very rarely do they study the fact that these industries may be fighting for life if they are wrongly imposed, if the revenue is imposed wrongly on them. So usually we used to think that the tariff commission would do the exercises, that whether this is right or wrong and how far they can go, and then coordinate, but this is hardly the case. It's almost at their will they can impose a sort of deficit finance on the other industries. Now this is one system that we must deviate from and go into a properly thought out structure. The other thing I'd like to mention here is that we have discussed about the technicalities of the WTO at length. We are more or less aware of all these things, but I think what remains to be done is actually our reform on the ground. Unless and until we do that, we can negotiate till cows come home, but if you are not matching that negotiation with our support on the ground, we will not go anywhere. So I think we should look at our industries, we need to look at our research. For example, if we look at our full investment in research as a country, if I'm not mistaken, it's around 1 to 2% of our GDP, which frankly is nowhere near what other countries are spending on their research, 8 to 10, 15%. So this, in a world of knowledge, in the world of technology, research is the key figure that determines the future of our economy. And we are far behind in this field. So I think this is one sector we should look into. And I think basically this is the main point I wanted to make, because I think private sector should be brought in more closely in the negotiating table, with all respect to the bureaucracy who really do excellent work, spend a lot of time attaining knowledge. At the same time, the practitioners, the stakeholders should be there together to impart their experience also, so that we can have a absolutely sustainable policy stance. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Guest, for that intervention. I think the points made by you that the WTO, it is premature to announce its death in that way. I will agree with you on that. I will come back on that. That's very well taken. The number two, that the need to have multiple stakeholders together when we proceed with the solutions and the actions in that way, along with the business and other academia and other stakeholders, the number two. And number three, I again take your point that the reforms are the most important thing, and the home ground preparation are very critical, and as we move forward with them in that way. Thank you very much for listening through, and we hope that through you we would be able to take the messages more further into the political domain in the coming days in that way. Colleagues, thank you very much. Before I do, if you, Excellency, if you allow me, and colleagues, please give the translation whoever is next to you. I would like to speak in Bangla for a couple of minutes for my colleagues, for the media, if you allow me, and you can give the translation next to you. Miss, would you kindly do that? For the colleagues sitting next to you to give some translation, if you think it is at all necessary. For me, it's a long-time love affair with the WTO. I remember first visiting the then GATT office in 1992. And I was doing my postdoc on that and coming to WTO at that time. And after that, within a couple of years, Mustafiz and myself, we set up the first research program in Bangladesh at that time at CPD. One of our kickoff program was on WTO capacity-related research and capacity building at that time. Since then, I have had the opportunity to represent the country in the WTO, be invited by the Pascal Lamy into the Green Room to be a member there, and also in terms of leading the mini-ministerial in July 2008, which is the last, the meeting after I think, the withering away of the Doha negotiation. Since then, I have been around for some time for doing these issues, and also now at the CDP, we are looking into that, particularly looking at the international support measures. How do you go about it, the iGrad, which had been set up by CDP, and also looking at the new ISM, if at all possible, and the post-COVID circumstances. At this moment, CDP is very much engaged also on looking at the criteria of graduation. Incidentally, you won't be subjected to that anymore, but we are currently looking at the criteria for graduation, both income-only criteria and also in terms of 2 necessary or 3 necessary, etc., etc. So the CDP is also strongly propagating in favor of the graduating LDCs at that moment. Personally, I look after one country, the graduating country, that is Laos PDR. That happens to be the country which I have been appointed the rapporteur for that. Now coming to today's discussion, আজকের এই ডিসকাশনের যেটা হলো, প্রথম যেটা হলো, it appeared to me, মানে অনেকেই বললেন, মুস্তাফিজ কিছু মনে করেন, I'm exercising my right not as a chair but as a colleague over here, that যে একটুখানি প্রতারিত প্রেমিকের মতো মনে হয়েছে, jilted lover like of thing, that we expected something from the WTO and the WTO did not deliver. I think that এইটা কি ঠিক অ্যাটিটিউড কিনা আমি শিওর না, এবং WTOর কাছে আমাদের মনে রাখতে হবে, নেগোসিয়েশন আলোচনা করে মার্কেট প্রেফারেন্স পাওয়া, it's very much an old-fashioned mercantilist approach. মানে আমি আপনাকে বাজার দিব, আপনি আমাকে বাজার দিবেন, আর আমি একটু দুর্বল বলে আমি কোনো কিছুই দিব না, আপনি সব দিয়ে যাবেন। এই জিনিস WTO is not the exclusive about it. WTOর মুস্তাফিজও তার ব্যাপারে বলেছে যে সবচেয়ে বড় অবদান এই সময়কালে যদি থেকে থাকে, সেটা হলো কোভিড সময়কালে বিভিন্ন ধরনের সংরক্ষণবাদী বিভিন্ন চেষ্টা যেগুলি হয়েছে, মুক্ত বাণিজ্যকে প্রতিবন্ধকতা সৃষ্টি করার ক্ষেত্রে WTO তার নিজের নজরদারি এবং অন্যান্য নীতিমালার বাস্তবায়নের ভিতর দিয়ে এটাকে একটা ঠেকা দিয়ে রেখেছে। সেহেতু একটি নীতিভিত্তিক মুক্ত বাণিজ্য ব্যবস্থা গড়ে তোলার ক্ষেত্রে যে WTOর অবদানটা আছে, এটাকে ছোট করে দেখা ঠিক হবে না। শুধুমাত্র এই উত্তরণকালীন LDCর পক্ষে কিছু এসছে কি আসে নাই সেটার ভিত্তিতে। দ্বিতীয়ত হলো যে WTOর সবচেয়ে বড় জিনিস হলো যে এখনও যেটা আমরা যেতে হয়নি, কারণ আমরা স্বল্পোন্নত দেশ বলে, সেটা হলো যে বিভিন্ন বিবাদ মীমাংসার জন্য যে ব্যবস্থা আছে, যেটা সাম্প্রতিককালে একটু অকেজো হয়ে আছে, কারণ আপনারা জানেন মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্র এটাতে খুব খুশি না, এবং তারা ওখানে যে তাদের জজ দেওয়ার কথা, বিচারক দেওয়ার কথা দেয়নি, কিন্তু এখন এইবার এটা WTOর এই 10 দফাতে যেটা এসছে সেই জেনিভা প্যাকেজের 10 ইম্পর্টেন্ট আইটেমসের একটা হলো ওই সংস্কারের ইস্যু, এবং মুস্তাফিজও বলেছে ওখানে আমাদের যুক্ত হতে হবে ইত্যাদি। এছাড়া সক্ষমতা বৃদ্ধির বিষয়ে WTOর পক্ষ থেকে আছে, এছাড়া EIF আছে, এইড ফর ট্রেড ইত্যাদি। সেহেতু আমি আপনাদের কাছে প্রথম যে পয়েন্টটা বলবো, WTOকে শুধুমাত্র নিগোসিয়েশনের আমাদের সুবিধা LDC না পাওয়ার ভিতরে সংকীর্ণভাবে দেখাটা ঠিক হবে না। এটা WTOর তার বিভিন্ন প্রাতিষ্ঠানিক অঙ্গকে সামগ্রিকতায় বিবেচনা করতে হবে, এবং চেয়ার বলেছেন আগামী দিনে এটা হয়তো আরও দ্য চিফ গেস্ট বলেছেন আগামী দিনে এটা আরও বিকশিত হবে। দ্বিতীয়ত হলো MC12কে আমরা কী দৃষ্টিতে দেখব। আমি একটা কথা বলেছি, ডেভেলপিং কান্ট্রিজে LDC গ্র্যাজুয়েশনের দৃষ্টি থেকে দেখলে পরে মনে হবে প্রতিশ্রুতি আছে, কিংবা স্বীকৃতি আছে সমস্যার, প্রতিশ্রুতি নেই। তাহলে এইটা যদি হয় তাহলে MC12-এর আমরা সাফল্যটা কি শুধুমাত্র আবার ওইখানে শুধুমাত্র স্বল্পোন্নত দেশের দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি থেকে দেখব কিনা, আমি মনে করি এটা ঠিক না। পৃথিবীতে এই মুহূর্তে যেই আপনার ভূ রাজনৈতিক এবং ভূ অর্থনৈতিক ঘটনাবলী হচ্ছে, তার ভিতরে একটি বহুপাক্ষিক প্রতিষ্ঠান WTO সেখানে মিলিত হয়ে একটি ঘোষণাতে আসতে পেরেছে। এটা পৃথিবীর জন্য অর্থনীতির অনিশ্চয়তা কাটানোর জন্য একটা বড় ভূমিকা রাখছে বলে আমি মনে করি। এটাও আমাদের সংকীর্ণভাবে দেখাটা ঠিক হবে না। ওখানে যে আপনারা মনে আছে, ঠিক এই WTO 12 নম্বর হওয়ার আগে 2-3 মাস আগে ইউরোপিয়ান ইউনিয়নের পক্ষ থেকে একটি চিঠি দেওয়া হয়, যেখানে রাশিয়ার প্রতি যে সমস্ত স্যাংশন দেওয়া হয়েছে সেই স্যাংশনসগুলো যাতে কার্যকরভাবে WTO-তে বাস্তবায়ন করা হয়। আই এম এক্সেলেন্সি রেফারিং টু দ্য communication which came from European Union regarding the sanctions to be operationalized through the WTO mechanism on that. And the very following day, Russia থেকে আরেকটা চিঠি আসে that we would need to really go against it, etc., what you can expect in that way. In that backdrop, এই মিটিংটা যে আদৌ হবে, whether this meeting will at all takes place or not, was under concern. সেখানে এই মিটিংটা হয়েছে, এবং যদিও আপনারা জানেন কিভাবে হয়েছে, সেটা হলো যে none of the leaders of the LDCs met face to face, leaders of the delegation made face to face. It was all recorded, videoed, and put a run on that, so that they have no face to face interaction on that. So it has a big one. It has a big contribution in terms of COVID-19 এর against এবং ফুড সিকিউরিটির ব্যাপারে, রিফর্মসের জন্য, এবং ইত্যাদি ইস্যুসে আছে। সেহেতু শুধুমাত্র স্বল্পোন্নত দেশের দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি দিয়ে দেখাটার এটার অবদানটাকে ঠিক হবে বলে আমি মনে করি না। সেহেতু এইটার কথা অবশ্য বলেছেন মুস্তাফিজ বিভিন্ন জায়গায়। নন ট্রেড ইস্যুস কামিং টু WTO, উই লাইক ইট অর নট, দ্য নেগোসিয়েশন মানে WTOর এখন ফোকাস ক্রমান্বয়ে আপনার উৎপাদনের পণ্যের থেকে উৎপাদন প্রক্রিয়াতে চলে গেছে। From the product we have moved to the processes. সেহেতু প্রসেসের ভিতর, প্রোডাক্টের ভিতরে আপনি কি ভালো মন্দ কি আছে জানি না, কিন্তু ওটা উৎপাদন প্রক্রিয়ার ভিতরে যদি খারাপ কিছু থেকে থাকে সেটাও গ্রহণযোগ্য হবে না। এটা যে শুধুমাত্র পরিবেশের ব্যাপারে হচ্ছে তা না, এটা পরিবেশ প্রতিবেশের ব্যাপারে শুধু না, এখন যে শুধুমাত্র শ্রমিকদের অধিকারের ব্যাপার হচ্ছে শুধু না। আমি আপনাদের নিশ্চিত করে বলতে পারি মানবাধিকারের বিষয়টি এই বাণিজ্যের সাথে ওতপ্রোতভাবে আসবে। Human rights will be part of the discussion on the trade. It is something which is there, inevitable, and we need to prepare for it. We cannot really shy away from it, from this particular. So আমি non-trade issues এর কথা বলছি, এবং এটা integration is a very important thing that we integrate. ওই যে কপের কথা বলা হয়েছে, we need to interface it when we do that. কপ যারা করেন তারা ট্রেড করেন না, আবার ট্রেড যারা করেন তারা কপ করেন না। তো এই দুই গঙ্গা আর যমুনা একসাথে মিলবে কোথায়? How this coordination will take place? Even that coordination তো হয় না between নিউ ইয়র্কে আমার যে বসে আছেন আর যে জিনিভাতে বসে আছেন, then this coordination is something which is not there. আমি এটা বহুবার বিভিন্ন জায়গাতে বলেছি, this important coordination between Brussels, New York, Geneva, this has to take place very strongly over there. এখন আসি যে সামনের ব্যাপারে, যেটা এখানে দুটো ব্যাপারে খুব পরিষ্কার মত এসেছে। সেটা হলো, এক নম্বর হলো যে আমরা চাইবো ঠিকই, কিন্তু আমাদের মনস্তাত্ত্বিক পরিবর্তন আনতে হবে। উই নিড টু রিয়েলি চেঞ্জ আওয়ার মাইন্ডসেট। মাইন্ডসেটটা কি? এতদিন পর্যন্ত আমরা যেটা মনে করেছি একটা ঈশ্বর প্রদত্ত অধিকার আমরা সেটা হলো আমরা স্বল্পোন্নত দেশ, আর বাদ বাকি বিশ্ব আমাদের দিতে বাধ্য আছে। এই একটা অধিকার বোধের থেকে এই কাজ করেছি। এটা বাস্তবতা সম্মতভাবে হয়নি। এইটাকে মনস্তাত্ত্বিক পরিবর্তন যেটা দরকার সেটা হলো আমাদের এই পশ্চাৎমুখী চিন্তা থেকে একটা অগ্রাভিমুখী চিন্তাতে আসতে হবে। আমরা ট্রেড নেগোসিয়েশনের ভাষায় এটা ডিফেন্সিভ পলিসি থেকে অ্যাপ্রোচের থেকে অফেন্সিভ অ্যাপ্রোচে যেতে হবে। অর্থাৎ ইউ উইল হ্যাভ টু লুক ফরওয়ার্ড, ইউ হ্যাভ টু বি মোর পজিটিভ অ্যাবাউট দ্য ফিউচার, নট অ্যাবাউট হোল্ডিং ব্যাক টু দ্য পাস্ট। এই অ্যাপ্রোচটা আমার মনে হয় এখানে সকলেই এখানে বলেছেন যে আমাদের মুস্তাফিজের ভাষায় উই নিড টু লার্ন টু থিঙ্ক অ্যাজ এ ডেভেলপিং কান্ট্রি, a developing country which is emerging with its rightful place in the community এটার ভিতরে। এখন এটার সমস্যাটা কি জানেন? আমি আপনাকে বলি একটা ঘটনা। আমি একটা এরকমই হাই লেভেল মিটিংয়ে বসা বিদেশে, আমার আমার রাজনৈতিক নেতা মন্ত্রী বক্তৃতা করে গেলেন, তারপরে আমার টেকনিক্যাল পার্সন আসলেন, আরেকজন মন্ত্রণালয়ের সেক্রেটারি। আমার পাশে বসা ছিলেন আর এক ভদ্রলোক, আমাকে জিজ্ঞেস করলেন হুইচ ওয়ান ইজ কারেক্ট? তোমার পলিটিক্যাল লিডার তো বলে গেল তোমাদের দেশের এত উন্নতি হয়েছে যে তোমরা শোনই শোনই এগিয়ে যাচ্ছ 2041-এ মানে উন্নত দেশ হয়ে যাবে, আর উনি এসে বলে গেলেন তোমাদের এই সাহায্য লাগবে, ওই সাহায্য লাগবে, ওই সাহায্য লাগবে। তো কোনটা ঠিক? তোমার যদি এতই উন্নতি হয় তাহলে এত সাহায্যের কথা, পুরানা সাহায্যকে অব্যাহত রাখার কথা বলো কেন? সো ইউ সি দের ইজ এ ডিসজাংচার বিটুইন আওয়ার পলিটিক্যাল ন্যারেটিভ অ্যান্ড আওয়ার টেকনিক্যাল ন্যারেটিভ. This technical narrative and political narrative has to be somehow combined. এই ন্যারেটিভটা যদি আমরা ঠিক না করি তাহলে আমরাও যে যৌক্তিকভাবে যেগুলি চাচ্ছি সেগুলিও কিন্তু কার্যকরভাবে আসবে না। তাহলে আমি শেষ করি আপনাদের কাছে এইটুকু বলে, সেটা হলো যে যেগুলি আমরা চাচ্ছি এগুলি এখন খুব পরিষ্কার। এগুলিকে রাজনৈতিক নেতৃত্ব দিয়ে, কারিগরি সক্ষমতা দিয়ে, আমাদের সামাজিক সমর্থন দিয়ে এগুলোকে সামনের দিকে আমাদের এগিয়ে নিয়ে যেতে হবে। এখন এই এগিয়ে নিয়ে যাওয়ার ক্ষেত্রে একটা আপনার মনে রাখতে হবে, আমরা এই উত্তরণকালীন সময়ের সাথে একটা রাজনৈতিক উত্তরণের ভিতরেও কিন্তু থাকব। এই বাস্তবতাকে অস্বীকার করার উপায় নেই। উই আর রিয়েলি কোইনসাইডিং অ্যান ইকোনমিক ট্রানজিশন উইথ এ পলিটিক্যাল ট্রানজিশন অ্যাজ ওয়েল। তাহলে আমাদের দেখতে হবে এই দুটো যাতে ঠিক মতো সমন্বয়ের ভিতরে থাকে, একটা আরেকটাকে নষ্ট না করে দেয়, এটা আমাদের মনোযোগে থাকতে হবে। এখন আর নীতির ক্ষেত্রে এই যে মাঝে মধ্যে আমাদের এখানে দেখেন, আমাদের এইটা ডেল্টা প্ল্যান থেকে আরম্ভ করে, পার্সপেক্টিভ প্ল্যান থেকে আরম্ভ করে 5-year প্ল্যান আছে, আবার এসডিজির গ্র্যাজুয়েশন প্ল্যান হচ্ছে, আবার এলডিসি গ্র্যাজুয়েশন প্ল্যান আছে, আবার এসডিজি বাস্তবায়নের প্ল্যান করি আমরা, এরপরে আমরা এটার সাথে সাথে স্মুথ অ্যান্ড ট্রানজিশন স্ট্র্যাটেজি তৈরি করছি। এত প্লেথোরা অফ ডকুমেন্টস থেকে আমাদের বেরোতে হবে, আমাদের এই সবগুলোকে অ্যালাইন করতে হবে। We will have to come to one particular document, which is our negotiating document, which is our guidance document and everything. তার ভিতরে অন্তত 3টে জিনিস আমাদের ওটার ভিতরে থাকতে হবে একটার ভিতরেই। সেটা হলো যে সেটা স্মুথ ট্রানজিশন স্ট্র্যাটেজি যেমন থাকবে, একই রকম এসডিজি বাস্তবায়নের স্ট্র্যাটেজি ওটার ভিতরে থাকতে হবে, এবং একই রকমভাবে ওটার ভিতরে আমাদের পোস্ট কোভিড উত্তরণের যে এটা আনইন্টারাপ্টেড সিচুয়েশন উইথ দ্য গ্লোবাল সার্কামস্ট্যান্সেস সেটা ওখানেও থাকতে হবে। সো উই উইল হ্যাভ টু নাও ডিসাইড, এটা ফর দি মানে ক্যাপ্টেন্স অফ দ্য সি টু ডিসাইড, if tomorrow one of our ambassadors, friend visitors in Bangladesh asks, what is your guiding document? তাহলে আমি কয়টা ডকুমেন্ট দিব? আমি কি এসডিসি সাস্টেনেবল ট্রানজিশন স্ট্র্যাটেজির ডকুমেন্টটা দিব, নাকি আমার 8 5-year প্ল্যান 9 5-year প্ল্যানের ড্রাফট দিব, নাকি আমি আমার এই যে এখানে এসডিজির জন্য যে কাজকর্মগুলো প্ল্যানিং কমিশন করে সেগুলো দিব? আই থিঙ্ক ওই যে অ্যালাইনমেন্ট অফ দি পলিটিক্যাল ন্যারেটিভ অ্যান্ড দি টেকনিক্যাল ন্যারেটিভটা যেমন ইম্পর্টেন্ট, there is also important consolidation of our development perspective in one particular in a ট্রানজিশন পার্সপেক্টিভ। এই ট্রানজিশন পার্সপেক্টিভে এই জায়গাটাতে কাজ করলে পরে যে ওই যে সমন্বয়ের কথা বলছি, ওই সমন্বয়ের জায়গাটা এইখানে যাবে। আমি শুধু এই কথা বলে আপনাদের শেষ করি, আমি যেহেতু ক্রস কান্ট্রিতে কাজ করি, এলডিসির অন্যান্য দেশ সম্বন্ধে আমার কিছু ধারণা আছে, আমি আপনাদের বলতে পারি সব সময় যখনই মিটিং শুরু হয় সকলে বাংলাদেশকে এত প্রশংসা করে আপনারা কল্পনা করতে পারবেন না। দে অ্যাপ্রিসিয়েট বাংলাদেশ ভেরি মাচ। দি ফার্স্ট অ্যান্ড ফরমোস্ট থিং দেশে বাংলাদেশের প্রতিটি নাগরিক এখন এলডিসি উত্তরণ জানে। so much has been discussed and etc. It is a national agenda. There is a full ownership of transition, which is very not there in many other countries. So আমি যখন ঘুরে দেখি এই 30 বছরের ভিতরে, I think 30 বছরের ভিতরে অল্প অল্প করেও ক্যাপাসিটি বাংলাদেশে হয়েছে এবং অল্প অল্প করে প্রাইভেট সেক্টর এখানে রেসপন্ড করে, টেকনিক্যাল পিপল এখানে গ্যাদার করছে এবং মোস্ট ইম্পর্টেন্টলি আগে তো কথা বলার লোক ছিল, শোনার লোক ছিল না। নাও উই হ্যাভ এ গুড গ্রুপ অফ পিপল হু ইভেন ক্যান রেসপন্ড ফ্রম দ্য ফ্লোর অ্যান্ড দের ইজ এ গুড গ্রুপ অফ জার্নালিস্ট হু হ্যাভ অলসো স্পেশালাইজড ইন দ্য WTO। ওনারা তো কতজন যেন 10-12 জন গেছিলেন না? হ্যাঁ, 15 people from Bangladesh journalist community visiting in the MC12. Unthinkable. অন্য কোনো LDC এখানে থাকে না। পৃথিবী যে বলে বাংলাদেশ is not an LDC, এটা দিয়েই প্রমাণ পাওয়া যায়। So we need to really get to that point which people, the world wants to think us over there. Thank you very much for being here today.